everybody.
Good
I
to
have
see
my
you.
brothers and sisters here from the Tara.
Oh,
By the way, this Tara sadhana is really wonderful. It's basically put together by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's just the Guru Yoga from the Chittamani Tara sadhana. And I have added things to it, the three kayas practice, which occurs in highest yoga tantra. There's some things that I've added to it to make it a very complete practice. And we do it. There's a couple of people here. We do it twice a week, Sundays and Wednesdays. And you're welcome. Well, you can have the link and join. This week it's all screwed up because Sunday's gone. And Wednesday I'm moving up to Washington. I have to go to the airport at 5 a.m., which is uncivilized. And so Wednesday I'm not going to be arriving in Tacoma, Washington. And yes, let's do this. Anyway, it's a morning event. But you'll have the links. It's great. Join. You don't have to join all the time. It's a really wonderful practice to do it. They've done it ever since His Holiness recommended. I was in Dharamsala. That the best antidote for COVID and all the problems that are going on now is Tara. And so this is a very full Tara practice. And so we've been doing it ever since. I've been doing it twice a week. Sometimes people come, sometimes they don't. And but I'll do it no matter what. So you're welcome to join and go to this sadhana. And
Jimmy, do you need an initiation to go?
Nope. Technically speaking, the thing is this is based on the Chittamani Tara initiation, which was the first highest yoga tantra initiation that was given by Lama Yeshe. And do you have any initiation? Any Jano? Okay, well, don't worry about it because what I do is I use Lama Yeshe. I don't do anything illegal if I don't have a precedent of my guru, Lama Yeshe. What's mind-blowing about this is it includes the three kayas practice, which is the essence of the generation stage of highest yoga tantra, right? Where you go through all the absorptions, same like at death, and you absorb the seed syllable. So Lama Yeshe was criticized by all the great beings at the time for, how can you give this practice to be anybody? It's secret, because he gave it first thing in our meditation courses, going through the stages of dying, which is exactly the same process. And Lama Yeshe's answer was, why keep a secret? What happens to everybody when they die? Everybody should do this. Forget this stuff. You know? So, of course, it's good to get initiated. I can give the Lung from Targutari to Svaha. We can transmit that, no problem. And even once we've done the sadhana together, that sadhana is kind of transmitted in a Lung sense. But so it's more important. And so it's really practicing highest yoga tantra without being initiated or even without even having the full completion stage. But you learn what the completion stage is. The first initiation that Lama Yeshe gave, fortunately I was there, and commentary, 1979 at Kopan, after the Kopan course, was Chittamani Tara. He chose that to be his first highest yoga tantra initiation. Of course, as I said yesterday, Lama Yeshe's way of teaching was two things. From the beginning, Lam Rim, Lam Rim, Lam Rim. You should know the Lam Rim, up and down, up and down. And the Lam Rim isn't really taught much to the monks of the traditional Dharma. They go through all the texts. They go through the Guhya Samaja, they go through Abhisamaya Lankara, Madhyamaka, Low Rig, Tar Rig, etc., which I did when I was a monk. But the Lam Rim puts all those together. So it's actually considered more advanced, but our lamas chose it because it was a whole compendium of the path, and so precious. So having that, you would have all the sutra, and having Uruka Vajrasattva, you would be purifying from the beginning. And Uruka Vajrasattva comes from highest yoga tantra. It's not the standard Vajrasattva. It comes from the Haruka Tantra. In any sadhana, highest yoga tantra sadhana, whether it's Chittamani Tara or Haruka. Haruka is just an abbreviated name for Korlo Demcho, for Chakrasambhara, the wheel of bliss. Guhya Samaja, the highest Yoga Tantra sadhanas. They all have Vajrasattva at the beginning. Why do they have it at the beginning? Because all the sadhanas are dealing with imagining, visualizing. This is where you have an initiation where it makes it more powerful. You would visualize, imagine above the crown of your head, Chidimanitara, and that's called the commitment being. And you get that in the initiation. And then you invite all of the wisdom beings, all the enlightened beings of the universe in the form of Tara, and they absorb into that absorption, which is on your crown. And so there's always a Vajrasattva, because before you absorb the union of your guru, before you make your subtlest mind, oneness with the subtle mind of your guru and the Buddha and Tara, you do Vajrasattva to clean out all the subtle channels, winds, and drops before you invite everybody into these beings into yourself. So in this little sadhana, I managed to do that by, when we do the recitation, you find out if you join, there's two recitations. The one that was in the original booklet, which is just a guru yoga from the Chidimanitara. That's why we add this other way of practicing. So there's a recitation from the heart, and you do the recitation from the heart. That's still there. But what I added is the first recitation from the crown. So as we recite the Tara mantra from the crown, above the crown of our head is Guru union with Tara. In the heart is a Tam with a mantra going around, and et cetera, et cetera. So the first recitation, we focus on pure clear light coming down and purifying all of our subtle body, which is exactly the same effect and the same equivalent of Vajrasattva. So I put it in there because it feels funny to absorb your guru, say the Dalai Lama and Tara. So you got the initiation from Tara. So the Dalai Lama in union with Tara. You absorb, and then at the beginning, you absorb all the enlightened beings. So you're inviting them all to come down and enter you. You don't want to have them all coming down and enter you when all of your winds and channels are all in knots and everything, because you're not purified at the level of subtle body. So I put it in there to make it complete. So it's a very wonderful sadhana. The sadhana itself was taken out by Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche from Chidimanitara. And I put in a couple of things from Lama Yeshe. So you're welcome to participate. And we do this, I use this booklet because we use the introductory prayers from this practice. And that's what we can do now. And then the same as yesterday, then the Heart Sutra. But even though it's implicit in the prayers, we still make a vast motivation that the reason we're doing this is to awaken to a highest level so we can benefit all beings, including ourselves. Only when we are awakened, more awakened, will we be beneficial or more beneficial to benefit ourselves and all beings. That's basically the essence of the refuge. So when you do refuge, it's on page 9. There's a couple of versions, but we do the one from page 9 because we've introduced other things. Almost always really, you have an object of refuge. You have what's called a merit field. Basically it's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, isn't it? In the Tibetan tradition, the merit field is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and Lama, which contains all of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So you have something for all of the prayers and practices that follow. You do it in relationship to this visualization or this imagination. That's the merit field. And so at the minimum, when we do the practices, any practice, you don't have to have initiation. You're taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and usually the Lama also. In the Chinese tradition, they say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the 3 jewels within, which is also a very powerful way. We should do both, actually, in a way. including the Buddha Dharma Sangha that are within us, the seed of awakening that we have within us. We take refuge in our own enlightenment and our own clear light mind. So that's what we're doing when we're doing this practice. This isn't the Tara. So we would have visualized at the beginning the union oneness of Tara and the preceptor, the guru. And I always tell with relation to your question, Louis, yeah, in relation to your question, in order to have a guru, because being this means initiated means you have a guru. That's basically. Because what makes an initiation happen? Highest Yoga Tantra, they're very complex. You have the Vaz initiation that has 3 hours of rituals and all the Dhyani Buddhas. You have the secret initiation, which you're dealing with channels, winds, and drops. And then you have the wisdom initiation, and it's all very elaborated. So people go to an initiation, even if you did get initiated, you'll come out, I don't know what happens. It went on for 4 hours of complicated rituals, and they're coming around touching us with bells. But one can guarantee that you took the initiation. The most important factor is seeing the preceptor, say the Dalai Lama, the one giving the initiation, we'll call him the Lama. And in this case, Tara of this practice, or whatever other deity it is. And then you bring them down to the same thing that we're talking about that you do in the sadhana. You bring them down to your subtlest mind at the heart drop. And then you can be sure you got an initiation. Otherwise, I don't know if I did all these rituals right or not. But that's the main thing. And one of the things is when you do that, then that person becomes your guru. That's the thing is with highest Yoga Tantra, you are actually taking a guru for life for that to happen. It doesn't mean if they turn out to be a little strange or something that you don't just remove yourself from them. Just, okay, always thankful for what you gave me, drink tea and practice the Dharma, but you never disparage. You always keep them in your heart, which I believe should be anyone you love. You always keep them. Don't cut people out of your heart. Just don't be around them anymore if it doesn't work. So that's the process. So with relation to the Buddha Dharma Sangha, whether it's Sutra or Tantra, there is a refuge object. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Community, my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soki chonam ha changchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jin sogi pesonam ki dola penchir sangye drupar sho sangye chodan soki chonam ha changchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jin sogi pesonam ki dola penchir sangye drupar sho. Special generation of bodhicitta. In particular, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, quickly, I must obtain complete and perfect Buddhahood. Here it says, Tara, therefore I shall practice the yoga of the 3 jewels of Guhya Shakyamuni. And the 4 immeasurable thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. That is love. That's exactly the definition of love for Buddhism. Exactly. Nothing else added. As I said, I love you because you're beautiful. I love you because you're nice to me. Only I love you because you exist and I wish you to have happiness and the causes of happiness. Not just may all beings be happy, but I wish the cause. So then it's sustainable. You're wishing other beings, all beings, to have sustainable happiness by cultivating the cause of happiness. And that becomes more clear in the suffering. Compassion, immeasurable compassion. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. That is compassion. Nothing else added. And the causes of suffering, of course, is what we're studying right now. We're studying dukkha, and today we're going to go into the causes of dukkha. We're going to go into the causes of dukkha, karma, and klesha. karma and disturbing emotions. And the more we understand the Four Noble Truths in this process, right into working with disturbing emotions, etc., and emptiness, etc., the more that prayer of compassion for others has meaning, because we understand what we're wishing for other people. We're wishing them to have compassion, to have removed from suffering, because we know what the causes are to remove suffering. So the prayer becomes powerful, the wisdom of understanding the Four Noble Truths. May all beings be inseparable from bliss without sorrow. May all beings abide in equanimity, free from the extremes of attachment and aversion, greed and hatred. So I go through the 7 limb prayer. I just can't not, it's a 7 limb prayer. It's the whole path in a way, but I don't want to put it at the end, because at the end, we're going to go to the Lam Rim quickly. That will be the path of suffering. In the Theravada tradition, you have the Eightfold Noble Path. Right. So anyway, the 7 limb prayer, and we maintain a visualization of the teacher and of the, in this case, it's a Tara sadhana, of the union of Tara and the sadhana. So then again, if you're not initiated, I always say you can borrow the Dalai Lama. He'll be, yeah, you can borrow him to be your guru while you're there. I'm trying to get this picture back up. Some other thing comes on top and takes it out. I don't know what happened. I lost. Where do I go to get the picture back if it went off?
I'm sharing the prayers right now. So as soon as I stop
Oh,
sharing,
then it comes on. Okay, because I lost everything. Okay, no problem. So it was another message that came up, and I clicked it off to unblock the screen. So great. So prostrating. Your liberating body is fully adorned with all the signs of a Buddha. Your melodious speech. This is the guru. This is the master. You can think of Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama wrote this when he was 19. As I said, he said, no way I write a sadhana about myself, but they begged him. So he wrote it. And the practice is, you've probably seen this text. I'm sure you have it in your center. The union of Avalokiteshvara and the spiritual master is the sadhana that he wrote. And Lama Yeshe has a wonderful commentary on it. Your liberating body is fully adorned with all the signs of a Buddha. Your melodious speech, complete with all 60 rhythms, flows without hesitation. Your vast, profound mind, filled with wisdom and compassion, is beyond all conceptions. I prostrate to the wheel of these 3 secret adornments of your body, speech, and mind. I'll say a little bit about how to prostrate. The first thing you do with anything, you do it with emptiness. And so how do you do that with prostration and giving, etc.? It's called the circle of the 3. The object to whom you're prostrating, in this case, the guru or the 3 jewels, you, the person prostrating, and the act of prostrating are dependent arising, aren't they? They're empty of being independent. So everything you do, you think, myself, the object I'm prostrating to, and the action of prostrating are interdependent. Without all 3, you don't have a prostration. In other words, without dependent arising, which is emptiness, you don't have a prostration. It's gross. So you do that with giving and everything else. So every action is done in that way. And then, of course, there's all other kinds of ways when you're prostrating. You might have been taught this in the Lam Rim. You visualize all sentient beings. You're leading them all in prostrations. All these things amplifies. This is Samantabhadra way. Multiplies. It's done in emptiness. And with Samantabhadra, it's done in multiplying. Offering. Same thing. Object of offering. The action of offering, you offering are interrelated. So they're all empty of being independent. The whole action of offering is empty of being independent. So it's done in emptiness, the circle of the 3. Material offerings of my own and others, the actual objects and those that I visualized, body and wealth and all virtues amassed throughout the 3 times, I offer to you upon visualized oceans of clouds like Samantabhadra's offerings. I mentioned Samantabhadra yesterday. Here's a picture of Samantabhadra. I think we have a temple now. Appreciate it. Can you see that? Or you have to have the camera off on this somehow. Anyway, I'll show it at the end. So I'll show a picture of Samantabhadra. And I said the way of offering like Samantabhadra is you can offer a morsel of bread and you can imagine feeding the whole universe. And so the imprint, the karmic imprint is feeding the whole universe, which is vast amounts of spiritual accumulation, merit, for lack of a better word. Confessing my mind being oppressed by the stifling darkness of ignorance. I've done many wrongs against reason and vows. Whatever mistakes I've done in the past with a deep sense of regret, whatever mistakes I have made in the past, I pledge never to repeat them. And without reservation, I confess everything to you. Today we go into karma. And when we purify karma, the essence of karma, what is karma is intention. And what purifies intention is regret. So that's confessing. Rejoicing. From the depths of my heart, I rejoice in the enlightening deeds of the sublime masters and in the virtuous actions, past, present, and future, performed by myself and all others as well, and by ordinary and exalted beings of the three sacred traditions. Requesting, I request you to awaken every living being from the sleep of ordinary and instinctive defilements with the divine music of the Dharma's pure truth, resounding with the melody of profoundness and peace, and in accordance with the dispositions of your various disciples. Then again, this is a 19-year-old kid writing this, and he's never written any prayers before. I entreat you to firmly establish your feet upon the indistractable Vajra throne in the indissoluble state of Ivam until every sentient being gains the calm breath of joy in a state of final realization, unfettered by the extremes of worldliness or tranquil liberation. I totally dedicate my virtuous actions of all the three times so that I may receive continuous care from a master and attain full enlightenment for the benefit of all through accomplishing my prayers, the supreme deed of Samantabhadra. So now we'll read the Heart Sutra. Thanks for putting all these things up. As mentioned, because the Heart Sutra is read at every major teaching. This doesn't matter if this is a major teaching. It's all a major teaching. It's Dharma, and we're practicing it. The Heart Sutra is read to remove all the obstacles to the teaching taking place. And the meaning of the Heart Sutra, which is the deepest meaning of empty shunyata, is what removes final obstacles. Our practice, we've already motivated with bodhicitta motivation, even though the Four Noble Truths is not a Mahayana practice, fundamentally. Of course, we make it one through the motivation. And then doing everything in emptiness, which is very much included in the individual vehicle. The root basis, what makes something dharma, is really shunyata, emptiness, dependent arising. So the Heart Sutra. Homage to the holy perfection of wisdom. Well, one brief note, the Heart Sutra is extremely abbreviated. The Heart Sutra is part of the Prajnaparamita literature, the teachings, the wisdom teachings of the Buddha, delivered by Nagarjuna. And so there were many versions, but what we have in modern times left is the Prajnaparamita in 100,000 verses or slokas, the Prajnaparamita in 25,000 verses or slokas, and the Prajnaparamita in 8,000 verses or slokas, and then the Heart Sutra is the Prajnaparamita in 9 verses. So it's pretty abbreviated. It's pretty terse. So when you read it, it's like, you have to fill it in, don't you? Know this, know this, know this, know this. You have to fill it in. So that's why when you first read it, it can seem a little bit abstruse or a little bit like, what's going on here? But a lot of it's very, very eminently going to be explaining it. It's very understandable. Thus I have heard at one time the Lord was staying on Vulture Peak Mountain together with a great host of monks and a great host of bodhisattvas. Sutras all open with thus I have heard at one time, because that means they were witnessed. It's almost invariably it was Ananda. Ananda had a perfect memory. He was the Buddhist servant and attendant. So his speciality was memorizing everything the Buddha said. But we'll say in a minute that the next verse, the Buddha didn't speak this sutra. At that time, the Lord was composed in the concentration on the course of dharmas called profound elimination. The Buddha was in samadhi on profound elimination, on emptiness. He was in samadhi. So he didn't speak this sutra, but he speaks the sutra through two beings, the main characters in this sutra. One is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, who represents the Mahayana, and Shariputra, who represents the individual vehicle, the monastic order. He speaks through them, and that's quite explicitly mentioned. He just stays in samadhi and speaks through them. It's another way of teaching. It's kind of unique. Well, not unique, but it's special in this sutra. So, and it comes clear in the next verse. At that time also, the noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, looked down. He beheld the five skandhas, and in their own being, they were empty. And the next verse goes, then through the inspiration of the Buddha. See, he didn't say it. The Buddha inspired them. They were set up. They were set up to say. The Buddha wanted this said through Avalokiteshvara, who represents Mahayana, and Sariputra, who represents the individual vehicle in the monastic order. And so he looked down on the five skandhas and he beheld them, and in their own being, they were empty. We mentioned yesterday, the Buddha divided us into 5 parts. He could have divided us into just 2. These things aren't self-existent. They're just tools that the Buddha set up. And so basically what we are is we're nama and rupa, we're form and mind, So he divided body, form, and mind into 5 skandhas. And the first one was form, the body. The body is empty. Because he looked down and saw that each one of these skandhas are in their own being empty. And then for the second skandha, and again, I'll repeat, aggregates is a horrible translation. Skandha means heaps or piles. The Buddha used that language. He's trying to make us so that we're not so concrete. We grasp at this 5 aggregates as being the I. They are all very real. We're very real. Everything is very real. The whole point of the Dharma and emptiness is to, hey, this is not so concrete. So he divides us into 5 heaps, 5 piles of dust, 5 piles of sin. We're a pile of form, all of the different changing parts of form. If you do Satipatthana, you look and see all of these changing things going on inside the body. You observe them directly, and it's not some big concrete body. It's all this stuff, form. And then the other is mind. Mind isn't divided into the Buddha into 2 parts. There's primary consciousnesses, which is the last skandha, and there's mental factors. You must have studied these. In fact, we always are studying mental factors when we're saying when we're listing the immoralities, they're mental factors. When we're listing the negativities, when we're listing the positive, love, compassion, etc., they're mental factors. And then all the other mental factors that cause contact and different ones. They're states of mind that rise and fall, and they don't remain always. They come and they go. So in the system of a Sangha, in the Mahayana he listed 51 mental factors. And that's not concrete. In another system, there's 39. You could have 100. It was a way of dividing us up to be able to understand what's going on. So of 51 mental factors, he gave the next skanda is the skanda of feeling. He gave an entire skanda to feeling. And feeling, as we said yesterday, is merely that everything that appears to us, as soon as something appears to us, there's a feeling that arises with this is positive, this is negative, this is neutral. Everything that appears, we judge it, that's what occurs all the time. This was going all the time, very practical, actually, this sutra. And so then the next is perceptions or discriminations, different translations. An entire skanda he gave to that. And so what are perceptions? When something appears to us, first of all, let's say everything appears to us as being self-existent, existent from its own side. Everything appears as being inherently, it appears as being truly existent when it's not. So it appears that way. So naturally, because of that appearance, the feeling that arises is based on the appearance that is also not truly existent. We're constantly saying, I like this, I don't like that. And then perception comes in and says, I want the good, I don't want the bad, I don't care about the other. So you can see the importance of giving each one of these. So everything that appears to us through our mind, everything appears as if it's existing from its own side, doesn't it? It appears as if we don't have to get into inherently existent, et cetera, complicated philosophical words. It appears that it's independently existent from its own side. The Buddha just said no separate self. So things appear, and they always appear as if they're existing from their own side. It's always distorted. Everything that appears to us, everything. So everything that appears to us, it appears as if it's existent for its own side, and then the feeling that arises, we feel that that's existent from the side of this object, It feels good, it doesn't feel good, it's indifferent. So then the perceptions, I want this, I don't want that. So we're grasping after things that don't truly exist. Attachment takes place. This is where the whole working with disturbing emotions takes place, which we're going to go into because they're parts of the cause of suffering. So at this very primal level, and this is going on all the time, everything that appears to us, and then all the other, we'll come back to that in a sec, all the other 49 mental factors, the Buddha just lumped into one pile because those were too important. He gave a separate skanda, and they're called karmic formations or volitional formations. All the positive factors, negative factors, object ascertaining factors, whatever. And then the last is consciousnesses. So that's primary consciousnesses. Mental factors are not primary consciousnesses. They rise and fall. They come and go. We study them. Anger comes and it goes. Well, not always anger. Happiness, bliss comes and goes. They come and go, mental factors. And but primary consciousnesses are there. There's the five sense consciousness of taste, touch, seeing, etc. And then there's fundamental primary consciousness. Those are in the skanda of consciousness. So there you have, it's all body and mind. Primary consciousness is body and mental factors. And he took two and gave them more importance. When you study Buddha Dharma, when I studied in the monastery and studied all this stuff, it was over. It was too much sometimes, When you do the Geshe study, they do 7 years of what's the topic? They do 7 years of Parchin. It's in Sanskrit. They study it for 7 years, and then they study Madhyamaka for 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of study. And so it's very valuable doing those precious texts. But the thing that I got most out of it when I was a monk studying, in your first year, you study low rig. Have any of you ever studied low rig already? Have you started doing that in your? No, if this is discovering program, if you do basic program, I think you'll start with low rig or something. Mind and mental factors. And of all of the topics of all that philosophy that I found could be used all along the path was low rig. Low is mind, rig is perception. And so it's very useful to understand all the parts of mind. What is a concept? What is conception? What is perception, etc. A really good topic. You ask your teachers to teach you low rig. The first thing you do is Dura collected topics, all the definitions of what is this, what is that. And you do some low rig, and then you do this practice teaching of low rig. It's very, very valuable. And then part of it is all of the mental factors, 51 mental factors, being able to enumerate them and having their categories. Certain mental factors you need for things to take place, object ascertaining, and you go through those and you learn what they are. And it's very useful, actually. It's something that you use every time you sit down to meditate. So you can identify when things come up in your mind when you're meditating. Seeing the difference between direct perception and conception is extremely powerful, extremely useful. Because in the same way that everything appears to us existent from its own side, and the same way that it appears feeling positive, negative, neutral, we want this, we don't want that. We can understand what is direct perception and what is perception that is a concept. We go through life living in a conceptual world and we don't touch the actual object often. You know, maybe water is wet, we touch that, okay, that's direct perception. But all the other things are conceptions, and it's important to sort all that out, and you do that in simple Satipatthana meditation. So anyway, we'll move on to the main topic. But this emptiness is the fundamental background of the Dharma, whether it's the individual vehicle, the sutra, or the Mahayana. Anything to be Buddhism has the four seals, is the most important of the four seals, that everything is empty. The first is compound phenomena are impermanent. Everything is changing, changing, changing. And then you learn the difference between permanent and impermanent things. Impermanent things are concepts. Permanent things are concepts. And you learn causality. Anyway, I'll just move on, and it'll come in as something I wanted to tell you in the context of meditation. So the most fundamental kind of meditation is Satipatthana. They call it Vipassana now, but Vipassana is the name of the result. They say we do Vipassana meditation. You go in, Vipassana literally means Vipassana, insight into the nature of reality. It means meditating on emptiness. Before that, you have Shine, which is mental quietude, but you have this other practice that they're actually doing, and we should actually do also, is Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness. It's really good that we do those practices as a basis for the whole path, you know. Because in order to practice Dharma, to investigate the mind, all Dharma is about investigating the mind, isn't it? Lama Yeshe, he says, this practice about you, it's about mind. We got that inference yesterday. We're grasping outside for things, we're grasping outside. The reason they're not acceptable because they're impermanent, they change, we grasp, they change, etc. They don't have any meaning from their own side. We project the meaning on things if they're beautiful or not. And then afflicted minds lead to suffering. So you have the whole path there. And we have the inference that everything is mind. Everything comes from the mind. All this stuff comes back to the mind. Nangpa, inner being. We're Nangpas. If we're Buddhist, we're Nangpas. We believe in mind, and we believe in another fundamental. We believe in the four seals, but the main thing we believe is everything is mind. Everything arises from the philosophy of Chittamani and stuff like that there, but everything basically comes from the mind. So we understand the mind when you study low rig. And so by having that understanding, you sit down and you meditate Satipatthana. Usually they have you do Anapanasati. You do that meditation. I'm sure you all done this, where you just sit and watch the sensations at the tip of the nose, the breath. That's it. You just stick with the breath. You can see the fundamental importance. Everything that we're all of samsara arises. It arises from the root, and the root we study with the Four Noble Truths is ignorance. Not the ignorance of not knowing, but the ignorance of misknowing. Everything that appears to us is appearing as if it's intrinsically existent from its own side, independent. Everything that appears to us. And then comes the factor, this feels good, this feels bad, this indifferent, and then I want this, I don't want that. And then you can see where the Buddha gave a whole skanda, because from that, there it goes. There goes samsara. It's another way of looking at the root of ignorance. The root of samsara being ignorance, which is the cause of suffering. So I'm thinking at this point, we should move on to, if there was something I'm in the middle of, we can come back and rectify it. We need to move on to, where is my stuff here? So we're back exactly to the Four Noble Truths. We've gone through the truth, and they're not noble because because dukkha is something noble. It's noble because this is the truth for an Arya. An Arya being is one who has realized the nature of reality, shunyata. So they're the truth for that realization. So we've gone through that. We've gone through all of the sufferings, the dukkha. And so now we come to the cause, don't we? The noble truth of the cause, which in a way is the most important thing. So how do we view this? The Buddha realized this under the tree. He saw the Four Noble Truths in the third watch of the night. And what that means is you examine dukkha. We can look at dukkha. We can look at suffering. And we're not always having that suffering. It rises and falls, it comes and goes, doesn't it? Even though there's a kind of pervasive one, but in general, these things come and they go, and they come and they go. So basically, that means they're impermanent phenomena, right? It's another basic things you must have studied, at least in discovering Buddhism, permanence and impermanence. So impermanent phenomena, the synonyms for impermanent is a cause. It means something that's caused. It's an effect. It's a functioning thing. And there's probably other synonyms that I'm not recalling right now. So what we can know, because it's not always happening, it's changing all the time. Our suffering, our dukkha is changing all the time. That means it's a result, and it has a cause. And that means it's possible to identify the cause. So the name, another epithet for the Buddha is the physician. So he saw that there's dukkha, he saw that there's a cause, and he saw that what is the cause, which is the same as like medicine, and the cause is karma and klesha. Karma and afflictive emotions. That's what he saw as the cause. And of course, the root afflictive emotion is ignorance. The basis of samsara is ignorance. The basis of suffering is ignorance. Marigpa, not knowing, but misknowing. So then we have the four truths, and we're going to go through the causes of suffering and a few other things. Karma is a hidden phenomena. You can't really prove it. Only the fully enlightened Buddha, almost sounds like cheating sometimes. Only a fully enlightened Buddha can see all the different permeations that from this cause comes this result, etc., are what you were in all your lives. No, you could see what you were in your past lives. That's very gross, actually. But to see behind every single thing, what are the causes for that thing, is a hidden phenomena. When you go back to the beginning of your studies, there's three ways of knowing, and one is direct perception. Bam, directly I know this. And so very little we know directly, except if you want to talk of water is wet and things like that. Most of our knowledge comes from belief, because it's criticized. Oh, we believe, we should know everything directly firsthand. But no, most of our knowledge comes because we heard it from the Buddha, we heard it from other beings, so we know it that way. And then there's certain phenomena because they're hidden. There's manifest phenomena, and then there's hidden. And how do we know the hidden? We know it that way, and we know it because of beings who we trust over time that they've proven to be correct. So we do take it on faith in that sense. But why can't you know? To know what karma causes what result is so hidden. Imagine this one teacher, the one who wanted to not go to school again was his reason to get out of samsara. He studied physics and everything. And I use his example, and the example is like the weather. Back in the 60s, America came out with supercomputers. There were Craig 1, 3, 4, 5. There were supercomputers. And now our laptop has more power than a supercomputer. And we have beyond supercomputers. Even with the supercomputers with the highest capacity, we can't predict exactly when there's an El Nino off the coast of South America, when the Western monsoon is going to hit India. Because there's so many factors, isn't there? The different temperatures of the ocean, et cetera. But that's nothing compared to our minds with 64 moments of every mind moment, 64 parts. And whether there's literal or not, it means it's going on all the time. So to know every mind moment in our relationship to every other thought, every other being in the universe, it's very hidden. If they can't even predict the weather, there's too many factors. There's too many factors to be able to say, to be able to prove because I did this, I get this result. All you can kind of go by is if you do something positive, like helping people, you'll get a positive result. And you'll kind of feel that. You kind of feel that you're laying down a positive cause. So that's why karma is so hidden. You can say, prove it to me, but you can't prove it. Even there are cases where the arhants, the highest arhants, Shariputra, Magallanaputra, someone came to the Buddha and they said, no, you can't become a monk or you can't practice here because of because they could see that they had so many delusions. And in that tradition, they believed if you killed your mother in your last life or did certain things horrible, you can't practice Dharma now. But the Buddha said, no. This person comes in the order. He could see back further. He could see back all the different causes going back. No, this person has created the cause. We can't judge by that just being seen a couple thousand lifetimes. So it's a very hidden phenomena, karma. And I try to think of examples. But anyway, we'll go through all the definitions of karma. Some sufferings are caused because they exist occasionally. They're impermanent. And the causes are karma and klesha. And this list I borrowed a long time ago from a book called Very Excellent Introduction to These Things, the Dalai Lama at Harvard, where he's teaching people that are a little more advanced, and he's going through the basic things. So he says there's two types of karma, intentions and intended actions. So karma and intention, same thing, almost. So there's the mental intention and there's the actions of intention. Keep that in mind, because karma and intention are one thing. Almost completely mutually pervasive. So then some of the other categories of karma, there's, in order for a karmic act to take place, you have to have an intention. That's with the real karma. Well, first often they'll put there's an object, there's an intention, and there's an act, and there's the completion of the act. Those are the 4 stages of acting something else. Like, for example, I usually use the example because I'm in the Gompa. I'll usually take the clock that I've been looking at and I think, okay, I like this clock. I think I'm going to steal it. I give lots of teachings. They at least owe me a clock. So I pick up the clock and I think, yeah. So you have an object, the clock, and then I'll have the intention, I'm going to steal it. I'm going to take this clock. And then you have the action of actually doing it, where you actually take the clock, and then you have the completion of the action. And that is when your mind says, now it's mine, I've got it. So it's not complete until that. There's not complete until those 4 are there. But the main of the 4 parts of karma is intention. And this becomes very important when we talk about purifying. We purify those 4 things. But we'll go through the rest of the definitions, because the main thing that purifies, and we'll say it again, intention, is regret. If you had an intention to do something and you regret that, the main purifier, if you do something negative or whatever, you don't ever want to regret positive. You don't want to regret that. It cancels out. Karma's intention. So if you sincerely regret, as soon as you do something wrong, most of the purification takes place, boom, with that moment of regret, because it applies to that intention. Your regret, your intention, okay? And the thing is you don't want to regret a positive action, because that also cancels that. I can give you an example. I always use the examples of giving to beggars right now. Okay, so I'm walking down in Dharamsala and there's all the beggars begging. I already gave the example of giving something. And I think, wow, I'm going to be generous. And I pull out 100 rupees. I give 100 rupees. And then if I was to go, oh, I regret that action, forget it. You just lost all the good karma. You have to give, to give something, you have to sincerely give. And so as soon as that's an example of regretting a virtue. Oh, why did I give that to the beggar? I should have never done that. So you just canceled out all the positives. So the positive intention can be purified by regret in the same way, regretting doing something positive. So obviously never regret a positive action. So, and then we're going to go through some other characteristics of karma. And the effects of karma are virtuous, non-virtuous, non-virtuous, and in the desire realm, and non-fluctuating in the form and formless realms. So a virtuous action brings a happy result. That's basically it. Then again, you'd have to have the clairvoyance or whatever to see what brings a positive result. So any action is virtuous if it brings a happy result to us. And others, of course, but that's implicit. And it's a negative action if it brings us suffering. Anything that we've done in the past, whenever we have something negative come up, we created a negative karma. And then non-fluctuating karma, as you mentioned yesterday, there's this, when we were talking about the different levels of samadhi, this form and formless concentration. If you attain the jhana of the form in this life, when you die, you don't go through the death process. You just continue in that realm. It's non-fluctuating. You continue from the meditation of the formless, and you're in a formless realm. They call them heavens, but they're obviously a little different. They're middle. And same with the form and formless realm, the highest samadhi. And when you die and you've attained that result, you don't go and born in Bardo. You don't do all that stuff. You just continue on with your meditation in a formless realm. They'll call it the formless heaven, not for a better word. And so then, okay. So now I'm going to give all the characteristics of karma. I took this all from this teaching of the Dalai Lama, where he went through to the students at Harvard. And you have it in some of even your beginning books, but I want to make sure that I'm giving you the right thing. So the 4 characteristics of karma, and this is where questions come. All of this stuff, karma, because it's hidden. You can't answer. Karma is definite. It's expandable. And if there's no cause, there's no result. And karmic imprints don't get lost. That's related to the definite. So anything you do, it's happened. It's done. The cause is done. The diet is cast. The seed is sown. And so that means it will definitely give a result. If we have something negative, it'll definitely give a negative result. Positive, it'll definitely give a positive result unless something interferes with that. Like I gave the example of purifying, of regretting, and purifying, definitely. And then karma is expandable. This seems unfair. People go, karma's not nice, you know. They think of it as like some punishment. Because of Christian tradition, people start questioning with punishment. I do a bad thing and I get a bad result and I'm a bad boy, you know. It's not like that. It's completely, there's nobody punishing us. The Buddha's not punishing us. It's not happening. But we still tend to have that. But there's one characteristic of karma, which it just feels like it's unfair. What does it mean being fair, unfair? And that's karma's expandable. So you do something negative, and that keeps expanding and expanding and expanding and bring a huge bad result from that one little action that you put the imprint because you haven't changed it or purified it. And it's the same with a positive karma. If you do something positive, it expands and it expands and it expands. So the result of giving a morsel of food to a beggar with that intention can get you almost enlightened. It can take you to the highest state. And just in general, a positive action expands the same way. You don't want to regret a positive action. So it's a characteristic of karma. To get an idea how this works, I kind of go by the idea, you imagine dropping a pebble into a still pool. And what happens? The pebble hits the pool. That's the point of karmic impact. And the waves go out and out and out, and they keep expanding. They would expand infinitely, but it's only in a pond. But out in space, like a radio wave, same thing, boom, they would keep on expanding until they're purified. So you want more reason for purifying and more reason to practice with conscientiousness and expand and perfectly expand the results with what you do in your daily life. So it's very tricky, this expandable thing. And then no cause, no result. If there's not a cause planted, there's no result. If you didn't do something, you can't get a result. And with karma, it's funny. You can't prove things, but there's certain things that you experience in life that the only way this could be is karmic. You know, it's almost the only answer possible. One thing, I'll give an example. I was in high school. I was a ski racer, yeah? And we used to drive up to the mountains in a Volkswagen, whatever cars we had. So some friends of mine were in another car. They were in a Volkswagen. and there were 5 in the car, and there was one in the back, and he was even in the middle. And the car went off the cliff. It went off the cliff down to the bottom. 4 were killed. And the other one, not even scratched. And he wasn't even in the middle. He wasn't even on the edge, or maybe vice versa. But anyway, so it's inconceivable. And the only thing, karma would explain that in a minute. Karma would say that person did not create the cause to die in a car crash at that time. Every single thing that happens to us, we created the cause, every single thing. So if you don't create the cause to die in a car crash, you don't die in a car. And if you don't get in a car, you don't die in a car. That's the safest way. And you won't, because the karmic conditions have to come together. It's not just like what it appears. And I use that as an example. Maybe that's not a proof, but as we experience things more and more in life where karma is the only possible answer, how that could be, how certain things could happen so horribly to someone who's the nicest person on the planet all their life, had to be from a past life like that. So there's different ways of practice. And then there's other things that are just by chance, they're inconceivable. There's a story, I love this one. There's a good friend of mine, we were monks together. And his father was a wild little kid. He was a naughty little kid. And his father went on to be, actually ended up being bipolar, and he was sound man for the Grateful Dead, took dope all the time. But anyway, he was quite an interesting character. But when he was a little kid, they lived back east in Connecticut. And you know how they have these footbridges over the road? They're not quite freeways, but they're kind of a highway. There's 2 lanes going both ways, right? But there are places, there's ones with exits. You can pull over. You're not restricted like a freeway with a fence on either side. There's a bridge that goes over, a pedestrian bridge. So his dad went on the bridge, and he dropped a rock off the bridge. Bam! Smashed the window of a car, and the car pulled over, and the guy got out in a rage and chased his dad and grabbed him by the ear and took him home, to his mom. And so it was a pretty strange event, right? So then this is insane. A year later, 100 miles away, they'd moved. His father went across this bridge and dropped the pebble and smashed the window of a car. And the guy chased him, and it was the same guy. This is inconceivable. That's got to be karma. The chances of that are just infinitesimal. But yeah, these little examples that come up, it's like, wow, it's all karma. Sure, everything's karma. And then also I have the unusual karma. I lived in a place where nobody heard the word Buddha ever, some suburb up Tacoma, Washington. 3 of my friends that I grew up with in childhood, we all became monks, different traditions. That isn't proof. That's not so strange, but it is actually. It's kind of odd. Nobody even used the word Buddha or Buddhism back then. And people I grew up with, we always had causes together. We obviously did karmic. The time the master came over to me after I saw my friend translating, and this master was as enlightened as they come, my friends used to see him walk through the back wall, and he'd be teaching different people in different places, etc. And so he comes up to me and says, "Do you understand?" And I know, but I like it, I knew then I would be a monk, but maybe not Chinese tradition. And he told my friends later that we've been crisscrossing lives since some dynasty. We've been crisscrossing again and again and again. And you can say this with anything. We've met the Dalai Lama. Most of us have. We met high lamas. We met the Dharma. The cause for that is so rare and so precious, not just to get a precious human rebirth because you were moral, because you were moral and you gave, And when you must have made prayers, you must have had when you made the prayers, like in the prayer, the Dalai Lama said, to meet in a future life, my teacher, my guru. So it's very, very rare. And it shows that you create the cause for these things. And these give inspiration to practice also, to practice these things. It's very real. What we do, we get the result. And if we make constant prayers to meet the guru, next life we'll meet him again, or meet the Dharma again. When we get to going to the path, and it's the path of rejoicing, we will learn to rejoice in what we did in our past life that got us to where we are now. Just to be sitting around talking Dharma, we created some incredible cause for that. That's a rejoicing. So we rejoice in the actions of others, and we share in their merit. We rejoice in our former backs action and expand them by that. Rejoice in what we have done and what others have done. So, okay. Different characteristics of karma. It's definite, it's expandable, no cause, no result. Karmic imprints don't get lost. And so karmic imprints, in a way, the Four Noble, they do it backwards in a way. The cause of suffering is karma and klesha. Really, you should start with klesha. That's the root, isn't it? The root is ignorance, and from that comes all of the delusions of attachment, aversion, etc. And then the actions, the karma that comes out of those delusions is karma, and they're the more immediate cause. So we're going backwards, which makes sense. It's like the diagnosis. The immediate cause of all these problems is karma. And then the causes of karma are the afflicted emotions, which we'll go through, and leaving an imprint on the mind, which is a karmic imprint. So that's how it all works. And then we have heavy. Karma is heavy from different things. It's heavy by nature. What does that mean? Say killing. I don't know, we always use this horrible negative. Killing by nature is a very negative action. It's one of the heaviest. You know how you have when you study the immoralities? I guess we will study. We'll go through them quick with karma. There's the ones of body are sexual misconduct, killing, and stealing, I think, isn't it? The ones that are actually, we act them out with the body. But of all of the negative actions, the heaviest is killing, and the lightest is idle gossip, that one of speech, because we're always doing it, but we say don't do it anyway because it adds up and it wastes everybody's time and your own time. So it's heavier to kill. And then in the same series of intentions, okay, so killing is heavier than idle gossip. And then it'll come different gradations. And intention. If we do something with anger, intention, stealing with anger, doing anything with anger, it's worse than just taking something. Depending on the delusion that comes along with it, the intention. And then there's the deed. If it's a sadistic deed, for example, doing something really, really horrible, that brings a lot worse karma. And likewise, we can reverse this. And then there's the basis or the object. Okay. If we kill, if you can't kill, the 5 heinous crimes that in the Theravada tradition, they think you cannot purify, but in Mahayana, you can pick anything, is wounding a Tathagata, killing an Arahant, killing your mother, killing your father, and causing a schism in the Sangha, causing a division in the Sangha. It's very important one to be careful not to cause division. Have it all be sweet and harmonious in our Dharma Center. You're not still, she did this, he did this, blah, 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 blah. It's really heavy karma. Like if it causes a schism. So those are the heavy karmas there. And so killing someone, like killing Heinrich Himmler, for example, killing someone who is constantly killing lots of people, doing a lot of harm, that's considered a lesser object of negativity than killing an arhat or killing Mother Teresa, et cetera, killing mother, father, etc., according to all these different levels. It makes sense in a way, the object of what we do. There's the famous story that you've all probably been told 100 times. And there was a time when there was a evil captain of a boat, and he was going to kill all the people in the boat. And so someone killed this captain of the boat in order to save everybody in the boat. And they say, well, that was a negative karma, but it was very, very minor. So easy to, because his motivation was to save. The motivation was to save the other people in the boat. You have a similar situation in Tibet. You had an evil king in Tibet. Tibet, when Dharma first came with Padmasambhava, the first turning the Nyingmapa, the old school, when it was brought there was a dark period up until in the later 9th century and 8th century, 9th century, there was a dark period before Atisha came and brought the new translation school. There was a king. And so, and the same thing happened in China. The original Bun people got in the ear of the king. Buddhists are bad. Buddhists were persecuted because the original indigenous people weren't so happy about the Buddhists coming and taking over. Many of them followed the same teachings in Tibet. Don't get me wrong. There was a huge connection. But on the other hand, with relation to the king, they persecuted. Buddhism was persecuted during this time of King Long Dharma was his name. So a monk killed Long Dharma. And that was a negative action. It was a defeat as a monk, actually. But anyway, he could purify it very quickly because intention was to save the Dharma in Tibet. And the famous story was of how he did it. He was kind of completely, had white cloth that was all dyed with a weak dye. And he came in, he stabbed the king Long Dharma, and then he rode through the river, and then all of the dark washed off, and he was in white clothes, and he could escape and go up to the mountains and meditate. And some of the lineages, so he was a monk who was part of the continuation of the lineages of Tibet, because the lineages died out during some of that time. Certainly the lineage for the Anilas, for the Bhikshunis died out during this time. So, and you need the Sangha to continue. So he was still a monk. So these are examples of the different effects. And then frequency, of course, if you do something again and again and again and again, it becomes more and more and more and more negative. And then if you don't apply an antidote, that's related to the expandable, isn't it? Expandable. So think about those. And then in the next you probably study, there's different results. Like if you, there's the fully ripening effect. Say you kill someone, that means you go to hell, as opposed to being born a human with bad conditions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fully ripening bed is the lowest of the realms. And fully ripening results as a bad migration, as a hell being, an animal, et cetera. And then there's the effect experientially similar to a cause. And that's because you murder somebody you get murdered. It happens to you. You steal and you get people steal from you all the time. It happens with certain people. They're really good people. Everything they get stolen all the time. Everything gets stolen. You must know people like that. I don't get anything stolen. Somebody else always gets things stolen all the time. It's not just because they left them out. It just happens. And then there's the one that's experientially, I think they call it experientially, functionally similar to the cause. And this is really the worst result, because then you have the tendency to kill. And then in the next life, and the next life, the next life, you kill, you steal, etc. So that's the worst in a way, because in the future lives, you're going to have the same habit to make the same negativity. So those are the 4 different results from that point of view. And then that's most of the lists of the different things, but there's a lot to talk about, I suppose. And there's a lot there, actually. And then there's different kinds of karma. There's throwing karma and completion karma. A throwing karma is the karma exactly at the moment of death. That karma will determine everything about your next life, if you're going to be born human, et cetera, et cetera. It's all right there. We've made countless karmic imprints, and it's the one that ripens at the moment of death that throws you into the next life according to that karma. And all the rest of the countless million billion karmas are completion karmas. They're what complete what happens to you in your next lives. And to exhausting all those things, of course, we can't exhaust all the throwing karmas. We made countless karma. It's kind of inconceivable, the whole thing of karma being so hidden. And it's really interesting with karma. There's a lot of things that make sense. We can kind of prove almost, not quite. And karma is so hidden that we have to take it on faith. Unless we can see, until we have one point of concentration, we can see what we were in our past lives. But this goes more subtle than what we were in our past lives. It goes to the depth of seeing every result that was brought, and only a fully enlightened being sees all of those, and Arahant can see a lot of them. So, 1, 3. Okay, we're going till 2, but I just want to be able to time this. So I think we better clarify. I just know when I'm teaching introductory courses, and I teach a lot of them, people have so much trouble with having to take things on faith and can you prove this or prove that? And so they don't have any interest in these Dharma topics, because it's mostly Israelis. Israelis are the worst and the best. I've taught courses at Tushita. I taught them back in the 90s where we had 60% Israelis. And from the beginning, they go, they don't want to accept any of this stuff, but they have the most questions about it. Karma is the hardest to prove, and everybody wants to know, tell me about karma. They have interest in karma. They have interest in the one that's hidden. And so it's so funny when you teach, and Lama Yeshe is very aware of this also. And you're teaching these things about karma. And everything that's karma, everything that happens to us is karma. Everything that happens to us is karmic. We created the cause. This is so important. Just by engendering karma, there's no more victim. We couldn't ever be a victim again if we accept everything that happens to me. I created the cause, which is true according to karma. It doesn't mean there aren't cooperative conditions, etc. Of course, there's karma and there's conditions. Conditions have to come up, can be other people and other situations. So merely engendering the belief in karma, which is so hidden, it would change our lives, because every time we're going to go, I created the cause for this. No matter how much we feel wronged by what happens. So naturally, when you're teaching Israelis and you know the question is coming, everything is karma, everything that happens is karma. And you know the question's coming and you prepare for it, etc., etc. What about the Holocaust? The Holocaust can't be karma. It's completely self-existent evil. The people couldn't have created the cause for the Holocaust. It's like, and so they flip out and you explain, same with rape, sometimes rape, if you were raped, it's your karma to be raped. That doesn't mean you don't stop rape. And it doesn't mean you don't stop Holocaust. You act against it full on. But it means that, strictly speaking, the people who suffered the Holocaust created the cause for the Holocaust. And the people, when somebody gets raped, create the cause to get raped according to karma. And that's where people can accept it right up to those things. No, that can't be karma. It's got to be because somebody's evil. And this is like diminishing, how horrible rape is and how horrible, the killing, etc., is in the Holocaust. And one time, when this comes up and you prepare, you start teaching karma ahead, and you say ahead of time. It doesn't mean when there's something horrible like killing, etc., you don't stop it. You make it part of your path to stop evil. Definitely. But there was one course I was teaching, and a woman gets up and says, "Karma shit," and then karma's anti-Semitic. Karma's anti-Semitic, and this is the thing where we get with karma, it's not personal. Yeah, but anything that would go against the most self-existent thing that ever happened in the history of planet, which is the Holocaust, that gets milked constantly, guilt. Israel persecuting other people, that it's like, if anything, I believe that the Israelis are sometimes they're reborn, the Palestinians, there's a lot of rebirth there in that case, They have the habit of persecuting the same people, but it's hard to accept it, and it's impossible to prove it almost, other than by getting a sense of it. And we do get a sense of it. When we do something positive, our heart opens and we see it's not necessarily a direct causal relationship. Like if you're stolen from the person who steals from you, you stole from them. I don't believe it's necessarily that direct causal relationship. It can be. There's stories in the Theravada Sutras of all these things, that this family sitting around a table together, and the dog is getting kicked by someone. They did something to each other in a past life that caused it to ripen in this life. But I don't believe it always has to be one-to-one that way. It means we have the habit of killing, the habit we go out there with our bad vibes of doing things, and somehow it creates a situation that things come back on us. I'm sure we've all experienced of going out the door with an attitude of anger. And the whole day, horrible things happen to us, horrible things. And then go out with an open heart, loving heart. Everything goes well. This will often happen. I think it's kind of a general thing that's sent out there that comes back. There's so many permutations that it's hard to know directly. So, if there's any more just in terms of how it's so hidden, why it's so hidden. It's just things I scribbled down a long time ago. And that victim one is important, and I can give lots of other examples. Okay, let's give another important contemplation of karma. If everything, this is the contemplation, if everything is karmic, is there free will? How can there be free will? If every action brings a reaction, where's the free will come in? Where would that be? How could we have it? It's a deep question, isn't it? It comes up. Are we going to be so, everything we do, we're so conditioned, we're conditioning the future. There's no will in there. One, there has to be some will in there, or it's absurd. Otherwise, we might just go out and do whatever we want because it's just our karma. We just do that. It's our karma. So there has to be some kind of free will. There has to be choices at certain time, but those choices are also conditioned. They're karmic in the sense they're conditioned. Everything we do is conditioned on top of conditioned. But that conditioned action is also karmic, isn't it? The fact that it was conditioned. My thinking is, my idea, what I think is the only moment we have of where it's free is a moment of awareness. So for example, you do you meditate on awareness, just to be aware, whether it's Satipatthana, whether it's Dzogchen, or whether it's Mahamudra. And so, of course, it's your karma that took you to this practice. It's this karma that you got in the room and you're sitting on a cushion or you're doing this practice. All of those things are karma. But nevertheless, due to all those karmic conditions coming together, there's a moment of awareness, of just pure awareness without conceptuality. And even getting to that point is karmic, isn't it? And so my view is there's a moment of awareness because that's where there has to be. There has to be some freedom of pure awareness without the action of creating another situation. And then you have a problem of in the lower realms, they say, how can you can't create positive karma almost. You have to have a precious human rebirth to be able to just do positive karma, etc. So how can you get out of a lower realm? How you can get out of an animal realm? You know, they have the karma to be born in a hell realm. And in a hell realm, you're always creating more negativity. You're always killing, being killed. It's how do you get out? That's why it's so hard to get out of the lower realms. So impossible almost. But it can't be completely possible if we've all been in the hell realms and now we are here practicing Dharma. Countless times we've been born in the lower realms. And I accept that. I don't have problems with that. Lama Zopa likes to say our permanent address is the lower realm because you spend most of your time in the lower realms, and it's so much higher to even get an animal realm and to get a human birth. We'll get to that when we go through the Lam Rim. You've heard it 100 times about the precious human birth and how you create the cause to get it, etc. But anyway, that moments of awareness where you cannot act in a certain way. You can decondition. And they always talk about being the deconditioned state. A pure deconditioned, unconditioned state is almost impossible, they'll say, but obviously through practice, we can get to that point. Oh yeah, then with lower realms. We had a cat at Nalanda Monastery when I was there. This cat was the most cantankerous, meanest cat ever, you know. It was a black cat named Tompani. He'd come in and he'd eat a whole rabbit and he'd come in, kill, and you pick him up and he'd even when the Dalai Lama came to stay with us, he had his room. First thing Tompani did is stack the ankles of the Dalai Lama. This cat was a bad animal. and so how does that animal ever get out of the animal realm? And then when she became pregnant and you can say this is all hormonal, but still hormonal is still karmic. The greediest, most selfish being that I'd ever met in our lifetimes sat there and waited for each kitten to eat before. It would never take a bite before all the kittens ate, waited. So this is hormonal, but I think that's a moment when you could, that moment, even if it's hormonal of the mother putting someone else first, you're free from karma the moment you put someone else first. You know, it's like, yeah, that is something that's really, really, and boom, if something happens to you at that moment of motherhood, boom, you're born in a higher realm because you put other being first, whether it was conditioned or not, you know. And then was another example around that. Anyway, I'll come. Oh, there's a story. You probably read it, how there's it's in the Jataka tales, I think. So at one point in the prior lives, before the Buddha was a Buddha, he was in a hell realm, and they were doing all this load of pulling the chains and doing some horrible action that they had to do. And he thought, well, I have to do this anyway. I'll do it for the person next to me. I'll take the hit for that person and move the chains and take the hit. And boom, at that moment, it was born into a higher realm and continued on with this path to enlightenment. I think that's just an example of what I'm just saying. So anyway, we're going to have to move on to the karma and klesha, the two causes of dukkha. So klesha is one of these words that there's so many afflictions, afflicted emotions, disturbing attitudes. There's so many translated. Every translator has their own disturbing conceptions, etc., etc. There's so many, but they're all based on the innate view that happiness and pain come from out there. They don't come from ourselves. And so we have to get to avoid things out there, an unworkable situation, because we can't control out there. We have to do work inside. Between karma and klesha, the main source of dharma. Klesha is the main source of dharma because it's the root. The fundamental root is the ignorance of not knowing the nature of reality. And from that arises attachment and aversion. We did that when we did the Four Noble Truths. From something appearing, the root is existing from its own side. Everything that appears to us, we think it's existent from its own side. And then from that comes self-existent object that we're attached to, self-existent object that we have aversion to. And so the two main branches are attachment and aversion. And from those come all the other kleshas, pride and jealousy, etc., etc., etc. So those are the things that were acted out. So karma is an action. And in this case of the afflictions, a negative karma is an action where we act out an affliction. We act out pride, jealousy, killing. And so it's that action, but it's also the karmic imprint. It's two things. It's the imprint, the paksha on our mind stream, and it's the karmic action itself. So there's karma as an imprint, and there's karma used in the word as that negative action that we act out. So going through the afflictive emotion, first I wanted to go a little bit in general, but maybe I'll go through the whole teachings on working with disturbing emotions. So what we do, the things that we have, the two wings of the Mahayana path and the center of the Theravada path. Mahayana path is the motivation, the bodhisattva motivation. Everything we do because we want to awaken to our highest potential in order to benefit all others, including ourselves. The only way we'll benefit ourselves is by benefiting others. Dalai Lama always says again and again, he goes, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish and help others. Then you get all the goods. We can think, well, that's not the purest motivation, but yeah, it's still better. He'll say it all the time, be wisely selfish, benefit others, and you'll feel good immediately because you get outside your own stuff a little bit. So I'm going to go through the teachings on working with disturbing emotions, working with kleshas, okay? And we've studied this again and again because generating the bodhicitta, we can do. Every time we practice, we can try to sincerely do this practice with the motivation to awaken. It takes time to where we do it with the purity. And the other thing we have to do is we have to realize shunyata. And we're not going to uproot samsara until we uproot the first cause, the first klesha, which is marikpa, grasping at a person that never existed that way. So our job of practicing the Dharma comes in between, doesn't it? Working with the disturbing emotions. That's where we can practice now how to overcome our anger, jealousy, pride. And we can do practices to do that. And by that way, we try to make a lot of positive karma, a lot of positive merit energy in order to get enough merit and energy to be able to meditate on shunyata and realize emptiness, which is a lot of things have to happen. It can take lifetimes before we can uproot and realize shunyata. But in the meanwhile, we can practice kindness, helping others, overcoming the afflictive emotions, right? That's what we can do all the time. It's practical right now. We don't have to believe anything even to start working on them. So there's different working with the afflictive emotions. According to Buddhism, the best way is the middle way, not to suppress the afflictive emotions, not to take our anger and our things and just squish them down. And we know psychologically that's not effective either. Psychology says, don't just crush them down. If you're anger, you have to recognize it. But there's a lot of psychologies that say you should act it out. Whereas the Buddha says, no, you don't act it out and you don't just suppress it. Because acting it out just makes it worse. It makes things worse if we act out our armor. There's these therapies where a punching bag where we can punch our mother or throw darts at our enemy, whatever, these therapies to express it. But every time we're expressing it, we're making more negative action. So the first two are between. We don't act it out and we don't. And so how can we deal with it? One of the first things is acknowledging the existence of when we're angry. We acknowledge it. And by learning the mental afflictions, by understanding these kleshas, it really, really helps, because with our mindfulness, with our Satipatthana, we recognize it when it arises. We give it space, we realize that's anger. Anger's arising within me. And we acknowledge it. And to help avoid suppressing it, it helps by acknowledging it. We don't suppress it, we acknowledge, well, I'm angry. And then we start from there. We recognize that I am angry. We know we've thought about it. It's not cool to be angry. And the main thing is we've observed with our mindfulness what it feels like to be angry. Oh, we'll go through that when we go through anger. Specifically, that point we'll make right from the beginning. So we work them out within our minds, either dissolve them or transform them. Mindfulness or self-awareness. When we can be aware of the arisal of an attitude in our mind, we can control and deal with it more effectively. And this is just a habit. Through regular practice of meditation, our mind will become more calm and less likely to react with anger. Remembering the nature, this is still not even specifically anger, they just use it a lot because it's a strong emotion. Remembering the nature of the mind. The mind is clear light. Mental events rise and pass. They come and they go all the time. Don't think I'm so bad. They rise and they go. Thoughts, emotions are impermanent. They appear, they disappear, they come and they go, they come and they go. They're not permanent fixed enemies. It can be useful of thinking of them as like clouds. All of the ways in a meditation in these ways, you see these emotions are like clouds in the sky and they just cover up. They just cover up the sun, the clear light mind, which is always shining. Let me see how I take this up. This message comes up the time to change the password on the VPN, but the VPN was given to me by a friend. I can't change this password. So anyway, remembering the nature of mind. Everything we do can be so useful. And for example, you see them as coming and going. You recognize that the clouds, it's like the clouds in the sky are not the afflictions, all those examples. And you know what's really, really amazing to know, to realize this is to understand how our language reifies. It reifies, which we want to be able to see, well, now I have anger arising. Now I have anger. Do we do that? We go, I'm pissed off. I am angry. I am angry. We use it in the same way to say, I am Jimi. I am a monk. I am this. I am that. I'm American. I am angry. There's a direct correlation. It arises in our minds when anger comes, doesn't it? Often. And, and so there's no space between us and our anger. And this way of we should be spacious, we should observe them rising and falling. We can do that with training. But in the Tibetan language, for example, they don't say I'm pissed off. They go, Lung Sapo Jungs, hot wind, hot prana is arising. That's what they say. And then it gives a big gap between that and when they go out and start punching somebody. And they go, now this is happening to me. Hot prana is arising within me. It's not a comfortable sensation. I observe it. And we also learn by observing when the sensations that come up when we're angry, when we're attached, etc. We create a space just through the language. What a difference between a distorted prana, hot pranas are rising, and I'm pissed off. You know? It's just an observation. It's built into the language. It's built into the language, not to say I'm angry. So all these ways we can use to help control the afflictive emotions. Working with anger. Anger is the worst because it causes the most damage. You know, it always causes immense amount of harm. Anger wanting to harm somebody compared to the other afflictive emotions. So we'll do some working with anger. We'll mostly work with that one. So being aware, mindfulness or self-awareness, all of our mindfulness practices should be what's going on in our minds. That's the whole point. So we're aware when anger is arising. We're not just, and this is another area where we're starting to be a little bit more free. It's conditioning that we do this, but we're a little bit more free from the karma of anger if we're watching it rise in our mind by habit. Being able to identify what it is and what these feelings are, this prana, this hot wind arising, more and more that does that, and pretty soon it becomes, instead of becoming anger, it becomes a disturbance. The karma is still there. And it's one of the very practical ways of using our Dharma practice. What is anger? What is the function? So first of all is, what is anger? What is aversion? Aversion sees an object that appears, like any object, it sees it appears from its own side and sees that object as negative, bad, awful. This is where it comes in with the Heart Sutra, isn't it? We see this as bad and we want to destroy it. We want to stop it. That's the definition of anger. An afflictive emotion that arises. And we immediately don't recognize it in that sense. I'm going to see this. That's basically it. But so anything, because anger appears, it's exaggerated, because everything that we see existing from its own side, it's exaggerated. It becomes more. So a person or an event comes up, we'll say a person, and we see that person as being bad, negative, and we keep exaggerating that negativity more and more and more and more and more. It's self-existent there until finally we want to destroy this person or this thing or this place, this idea. It builds and it builds. It's all exaggerated. What can first be a little disturbance, we can build it up and build it up. And there's a war. There's many stories like this over some little incident, a million's killed. Some little nothing. Nothing's killed. So emptiness helps so much, doesn't it? A whole war can happen because when somebody said a dirty name to another person, my God, it's insanity. So we have to be working with this all the time. This is our daily practice. But the root practice is we want to gain enough merit of spiritual momentum. So at some point we can actually meditate directly on the emptiness of self, of selflessness, and the emptiness of these emotions, etc. So we would say anger is in my mind and it has less power. Remember the nature of the mind, it's clear, everything's impermanent. So the harm of anger. What are the disadvantages of anger? It harms us mentally and physically. Right now it harms us. It's been shown that anger, when we're angry, we can only see 10 feet. When we're angry, we can't taste our food. Direct things are occurring right there, And so it harms us mentally and physically. And immediately we can understand. It motivates us to harm others, and that can cause us to lose friends. It destroys our merit. Nothing destroys merit quicker than anger. Quicker than anger, a moment of anger. We create negative karma and then suffer in future lives. I'll bring this point in now. Motivation and dedication, right? I should have right at the beginning. We motivate when we do the practice. Our motivation is to awaken for all beings. And at the end of our practice, we dedicate. Any virtue I may have accumulated, may that go towards my awakening, because when I'm more awake, I can benefit all beings, including myself. Very important, that dedication. Why? Because somehow, if we've dedicated that positive action, it can't be destroyed by anger after. We've reserved that particular pure mind through our dedication. And whereas if you could come out of a whole meditation retreat and you were kindness and your heart's full of loving kindness, it really is. And then you go out and get in a rage of anger, all the positive's gone. So dedicate it. I don't know how the process of dedication works, but it reserves that karma ripening in a good result. And that's the nature of karma, to ripen in a good result, a good karma, rather than becoming destroyed by a moment of anger. So, so those are some of the ways of working with anger. And we're going to go through a lot more because we're coming up on just the break. And it's really good to start thinking that way. Anger's in my mind. We can get good at it. I'm angry now. We do it with headaches sometimes, don't we? We can do it with a headache. We go, oh God, I got a headache. Oh my God. And if we meditated for a while, we think, this is a big one. I can tell this is going to be an awful one, especially if you get migraine headaches. I don't, but my wife used to. Horrible. And you can think when it first starts coming on, yeah, I think this is going to be a big one. This is a big headache going to come on. And then we don't start feeding it and getting afraid of it, because so much of the suffering is the fear and the discomfort that what's going to happen, instead of letting, it's worse than the headache sometimes, although they can be pretty awful, those headaches. But anything that happens, we make it worse by getting into that. So thinking about the advantages of anger above, and we wish to overcome it. What is it we feel we like or dislike about another person? This is an important one. When somebody just pisses us off for no reason, meaning we meet them, it's often they do something that we do. It's our own habit. Have you ever had a friend tell you when you can't stand somebody, I can't stand that person? And this is a good friend. We should be good friends to each other. And your good friend says, oh, Jimmy, that's kind of like you. He's acting kind of like you, isn't he? And you go, wow, yeah, you start being able to identify right away. And we think our friendship is flattering each other. The real friend will say, hey, you're doing that. And so you're doing just like that person. And then you start seeing very often that what upsets you about another person is a quality that you have. You can start, this starts working right away. Hey, that's kind of like me somehow, isn't it? And that helps us to become less, and it helps us become less judgmental towards our own faults, quote, we find fault in others and we realize it's just something else. And this is a fault within us, and we should forgive ourselves and be kind to ourselves. Loving kindness should be practiced for ourselves. This is just, I'm not reading this, I'm just kind of adding as I go through the outline. Cultivate loving kindness that can be by reflecting on positive thoughts and becoming familiar and filling our mind with, remembering karma. Remember, if we're being insulted, it's the result of negative karma from the past. All that can be helpful to help with anger. And if we act with, and one thing that's really, really important is it's so important. It's so self-evident. We cultivate the positive mental factors, isn't it? Karma is habit. You want a definition of karma? It's habit. So we have a habit of being compassionate. We have the habit of being negative. We have the habit of doing things positive and negative. So if we can have the habit of patience, the way it works with karmic, with imprints, with mental factors, if you have patience in your mind, anger or another negative factor cannot arise. Patience is the main antidote to anger. So the more, and you can cultivate being patient. You can cultivate it just like you can cultivate it playing tennis, doing anything. Practice of Dharma is habit, creating a positive habit of having positive thoughts come up. And patience is a good one to start because negative is the most negative of all emotions. The greatest book of the text of how to become a bodhisattva is the Bodhisattvacharya Avatar of Shantidev. And this, I think it's the 5th chapter of that book. 4th chapter is the one on tolerance or patience. Of all Buddhist literature, as Bob Thimmen puts it, it's the opus loci of patience, how to practice tolerance. Just reading it, you think patience, being patient, how it helps us. So we're practicing positive habits, and we're practicing as opposed to practicing negative habits all the time. So that's what's going on, and we're going to have to take a break now for 45 minutes, and we'll come back to that, and there should be a lot of food for discussion on that already. Stuff karma brings up so many things, so I could go on and do another 15 minutes now, but we'll take our break. So we'll see you at 2:45. Yeah. Okay, thanks. We should do just a quick dedication. We don't have to, by listening to the teachings of karma, Buddhist teachings on karma, by wishing to practice it, may we cultivate positive habits, and may, just by listening, just by the effort we put to listen to the Dharma and to be here, may that ripen in the form of our awakening. Because until we are more awake, we can't help ourselves or others. And then again, we might get angry during the break. Now we know why. It doesn't have to be full on anger. We dedicate right away, and everything that's positive that came from what our actions. And keep in mind that it's positive. You can have the worst meditation ever. Oh, I had a crappy meditation the whole time. The mere effort that you put to practice is positive energy that you can rejoice in and you can dedicate. The mere effort of getting to the Dharma, the mere effort of driving to the Dhammasana or whatever, all that counts as positive. So, okay, enjoy the break. We'll see you at
2:45.
2:45.
Welcome back, everybody. From
Thank
lunch.
you. So again, we reset our motivation. The reason what we're doing is so that we can awaken to our highest potential in order to be, which is awake, which is Buddha, or at least more awake, so that we can be effective or more effective in benefiting all beings, including ourselves. So I'm gonna, as far as going through the afflictive emotions and working with them, we went through quite thoroughly. The worst one is anger. It was, as it was said, is because where do I have the copy there? Is because it's the most destructive. It's the most destructive one. And in general, I mentioned cultivating patience. When the mind is patient, anger can't enter, but it's the same with any positive mental factor. Any positive mental factor is in the mind. A negative mental factor cannot be in the same mind moment. Of course, we can oscillate back and forth pretty between both of them. But you could say loving kindness. When loving kindness is in your mind, it's not anger. But the reason I'm probably using tolerance or patience, because you can cultivate it. It's really straightforward, more patient, more patient, more patient. You can hold it in your mind. Whereas a loving compassion can come up in feelings in the mind, something that you kept the mind occupied with, and it doesn't let the anger in, which is the most destructive. I paraphrased before, but it's the definitions are what is anger? Anger is defined as a mental factor that perceives its object as unattractive, exaggerates its unattractiveness, becomes antagonistic, and wishes to harm the object. And it builds up and up and up and up. And then all of the things we went through about how anger harms. That's the specific definition. It's always something has to appear self-existent, like in the teaching on the Heart Sutra. It appears as from its own side attractive, and then we keep exaggerating. We see this when we get attached to something, right up to obsession. We see this with aversion. I'll read the attachment definition. A mental factor that perceives its object as attractive, exaggerates it, and regards it as a cause of happiness and wants to possess and retain it. So you can see how it builds and builds and builds. It builds and builds, this attachment. And so fundamentally, you could say the cause of samsara, the root cause is of course, the ignorance. And then comes attachment. You often will teach the attachment. Attachment to things keeps us going around and around, living out these things. And of course, aversion, which is just the opposite, the anger. So that's, yeah, all of these different things, working with these emotions we can do. Right at that point, is there any questions about these? Any questions come up? Because I'm going to continue to finish, but go ahead and well, they're fresh in your mind. Nope.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
can you define kleshas again?
Klesha. Did I define them? Well,
Earlier, sorry,
basically,
it was from your earlier talk.
From the earlier talk. Okay, basically, it's disturbing emotions. It's defined as disturbing attitudes.
So anger is a klesha.
Yeah, so anger is a klesha, attachment's a klesha, all of these things are kleshas. So there are these different minds, they're positive and negative mental factors, basically. Mostly we're talking about negative mental factors when we talk about kleshas. There's primary minds and mental consciousnesses. So primary mind is the 5 sense consciousness and gross mental consciousness. And then the mind was divided up by the Buddha into many mental factors, although it was divided up by a Sangha, different ones. And they're all the same, but there's a couple of differences between the Pali tradition and the Mahayana. So in both of them equally, you have negative mental factors. Those are kleshas: anger, attachment, aversion, pride, and jealousy. And they come from the root attachment. And there's a lot of other mental factors that there's neutral mental factors like sleep, regret. There's a few others, object ascertaining. They're minds that come and go. And in the same way, since they're the cause of dukkha, of suffering, I mentioned at the beginning that we're not always suffering. It depends on what's in our mind. If we're having a loving thought in our mind, it's not suffering. If we're having a strong attachment or aversion, generally anger, it's causing dukkha right away, but it comes and it goes. So that means it's causal, and that means we can uproot the cause. The root cause is believing things exist from their own side. And then out of that comes attachment and aversion, which keeps us going around and around. And we just defined attachment and aversion. And pride and jealousy, they're just more forms of attachment like that. So our job is to lessen them. It makes life better and easier, our practice, because meditating on emptiness and realizing shunyata, it takes a lot of spiritual momentum, merit, for lack of a better word. It needs to have a mind that retains some kind of quiescence, which can take a long time. But the job that we can do all the time without even having to get into a big belief system, get immediately results, is working with the negative emotions and how to deal with them, because they harm us and they harm others. So we don't need to say too much more about them. One of the things about is renunciation, isn't it? We want to renounce the negative emotions. We want to renounce samsara. We want to renounce this state. And we get mixed up with what's renunciation. We're actually renouncing suffering and its cause. Actually, that's what we're renouncing. We think we're renouncing drug, sex, and rock and roll. I'm not ready if I'm ready to give that up yet, Poetry, love, sex. No, that's not what's being renounced. What has to be purified, there's nothing wrong with drug, sex, and rock and roll. All the problems come from the attachment to these things. And sometimes we get them mixed up. How could you have any blissful relationship without attachment? It's very rare. But in fact, attachment, you can be non-attached and enjoy every type of bliss. It's something you have to cultivate. That's what you look forward to as a control yogi or yogini. I can give examples about my favorite example. The Dalai Lama. I'll give an example of Lama Zopa, the Dalai Lama, they're not attached. They have non-attachment. They realize that, but they have a great time. They laugh and they carry on. They love the taste of food, love to eat, love to laugh and carry on. And there was the most poignant moment that I've ever heard of, and this was described to me by a friend who witnessed it. The Dalai Lama was doing a tree planting ceremony in Australia. This is a time when they take a sapling of the original Bodhi tree and the Dalai Lama makes the first shovel and they put it down, and they have a Buddha park there. This is what was happening. And everybody was having a wonderful time with the Dalai Lama. It was very informal. They're laughing and carrying on, having the best time of their lives. Dalai Lama was having a great time. And what happened? This is before they had good security. Somebody jumped out of the crowd and took the Bodhi tree out of the Dalai Lama and broke it in half and said, "Religion is dead," into his face. And the Dalai Lama, with total calm, without any loss of compassion, says, "That's another opinion." And everybody in the audience wanted to kill this person. They destroyed they're attached to their good time. They were attached to their good time. This person took away our good time, evil, bad. Oh, of course it wasn't nice when they did, but the Dalai Lama, here's the, that's another opinion. I mean, this is a being who was unattached. He can have total enjoyment and freedom from anybody else would flip out of that. In fact, everybody else did. And there's some other examples like that, you know. But anyway, the problem is attachment. The problem isn't with these different things as being attached and having aversion and anger. The kleshas themselves are the cause of dukkha. Sex, drugs, rock and roll are not the cause of dukkha. They're not necessarily a good thing. Not saying going ahead, because they lead to attachment, they lead to duller mind. You know all the reasonings. But then in themselves, they're not. It's the actual, the cause of suffering are these factors, and it's very important to know them and to understand them. Is there any other question? Is there some other things I can talk about? Come on, people. No? Are there any written in the box that can be read to me?
I've got one. This is Aaron.
Okay.
Just thinking I'd like to study more about attachment, because I think it seems to be a lot more sneaky to me than anger.
Oh, yes, you got it.
Yeah. So what would you recommend?
As far as what to study?
Yeah. How to study about attachment, or how to recognize it or work with it.
Well, what I was just going through was something compiled from different sources by Sangye Kadro. And even in her book, How to Meditate, she starts going through working with disturbing emotions. You find a lot of this from a lot of different teachers from all traditions, working with disturbing emotions, where how to meditate on them, how to work with them, etc. But this is a very fundamental teaching. What's the definition of attachment? What is attachment? And to really understand that fundamentally, all of them come from seeing things as intrinsically existent and then exaggerating the positive and the negative. But you were exactly right. It's easier to recognize anger because you're immediately uncomfortable when you're angry. It's not a nice feeling. But when you're attached, you might be having some very blissful experiences, you know, and you think it's because of the attachment. People without the attachment, there's no juice. Yeah. You know, that's really what we believe, isn't it, most of the time? But I gave that Dalai Lama example, extreme, someone you can take it to that level and you can approach it more and more, enjoying bliss and enjoying things without being attached to them. The key is when you're separated from them, okay, that's attachment. Enjoy all of these things, but when they're cut off, when they end. But you're very, very right. Attachment is like a razor blade under the honey, because it comes along with some good, nice feelings, doesn't it? Yeah, we get attached to things because we like them. We see them as a cause of happiness. Ultimately, they're not, but we refine this more and more and more and more. But there's a lot of ways of working through them. You can meditate on the things that I just mentioned. I think you can find, I think Sangye Kadro might have compiled, a lot of people have put them in books, you know, how to work with the different afflictive emotions. You could probably even pop it off online, working with afflictive emotions, and you'll get this whole list that I'm using, and which was a good compilation. And whole courses are given on it very regularly. People who are qualified to give courses, working with disturbing emotions. And sometimes it gets a little exaggerated because the root is emptiness and we should generate bodhicitta. But working with the disturbing emotions is something we can do now. We can change things now. And as I mentioned, with any positive mental factor can't exist in the same mind as a negative one. So by habit, by habituating ourselves to loving kindness, to compassion, sympathetic joy, etc., it becomes a habit. Karma is just a habit. But somehow, yeah, it's harder to have why the main antidote, why the main one in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara is patience or tolerance, is the main antidote to anger, because anger is the worst afflictive emotion. We can see why immediately why it's so bad. even we suffer when we're angry or whatever, what I mentioned before, food doesn't taste, but attachment's sneakier. So we have to work on things. Is this really the cause of happiness? Becoming a little more detached and still enjoying things. Realizing that renouncing doesn't mean renouncing pleasure, it means renouncing suffering. And it means avoiding the afflictive emotions and understanding where they come from, the root, shunyata, all these things work together. But see, because it's kind of almost, anger is kind of gross, but relatively speaking, maybe patience is too. Patience, you can just do it like weightlifting. You learn to be more and more patient. Each time something comes up, patient, patient, patient. But with loving kindness, it can come and go from the mind, and we can cultivate. So we're loving kind all the time. We're totally compassionate people. You've met people like that. But as an antidote, it's anger can never break through that. And as I said, the greatest book on how to become a bodhisattva is the Bodhisattva Avatar of Shantideva. And the ultimate chapter in that book is the one of how to generate patience or tolerance. So many ways, so many beautiful examples, isn't it? You know, like for example, there's an example that came from him, Shantideva, that you see in Sufism and all other traditions. And that is, don't try to control the outside world. You can't control it. It's impermanent, it's changing. So it says, you don't try to cover the world with leather. You wear shoes. And when you wear shoes, the world's covered with leather. When you wear the shoes of tolerance, the shoes of loving kindness, the whole thing you're protected by starting off with the mind right there. It's such a great example. That comes out of the tolerance chapter of the Bodhisattva Avatar. Many examples which make it living and alive and like that. So we can gradually, when we get impatient, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. When we do that, we could, the practice is becoming habituated in the positive as opposed to the negative. There was one Lama once, because there's the question is what goes from life to life. It's this philosophical arguments, you know, the Chitta Mantrans say it's this mind, and the Prasangika say it's the mere I. What is the mere I? How does it function? You know, and then Tantra, straightforward, it's the subtle mind, the subtle mind which carries the karmic imprints and et cetera, and goes from life to life. So, but that question was asked to one Lama, what goes from life to life? And he said, your bad habits. What a great answer, you know? Think about that. They're going to go to the next life. The bad habits of this life, you're going to continue with the next life. So start working little by little now and creating the cause for our next life to be good and better. And there's many ways we can do that. We can even do that by rejoicing. I'll talk about rejoicing in the end of the day. It's the most powerful practice you can do and simplest. You rejoice in the positive deeds you made to bring you to where you are now. How wonderful. I did some good things. Look what I got. That reinforces it. That expands it. Okay, is there anything else there around that? Great topic, attachment.
Hey, James, I have a question. This is
Okay.
Victor. You quickly mentioned something I've never heard before, non-fluctuating karma. Is that what you said?
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, and the whole thing about bypassing Bardo, which is
Okay. Well,
Thank-
when we die, there's the 6 realms, isn't there? There's the 6 realms from God realm, Asura realm, human realm, ghost realm, hell realm. Those are the 6 realms, and we usually call that kind of samsara, you know, the realms of samsara, where we take rebirth, because we're taking rebirth in those 6 realms. But there's another 2 realms, and they're called the form and formless realm. And the form and formless realm are just that. But, and like when I told the story of Siddhartha, he studied these practices of gaining 1-pointed concentration. And when you can actually get to the point of Shine, not Shine, but actually beyond Shine, the first the first absorption, the first jhana in the Pali tradition or dhyana in the Mahayana tradition, those, when you abide in those realms and you die, you don't go through the bardo. You just keep on meditating. You just keep on going. You're in the next life, but you're just continuing. There's no point in going through death and bardo and all that. It just keeps going. Does that make sense? And so it's called non-fluctuating karma. Once you hit those states, you get reborn in the God realms. They're called the God realms. They're not quite the God realms in the sense of the God realm with gods and all the super pleasures. In the form and formless realms, you're really high. You're really highly evolved, right up to the peak of samsara. So it's those. So non-fluctuating karma is the karma that carries you from you're alive and you've attained jhana, and you just take that right with you to the next without having to go through the bardo. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that's temporary, right? Because that's not the ultimate goal.
It's not enlightenment. No,
Right, enlightenment, right.
no, we want enlightenment. That's the way they say all the pleasures and subtle minds that you get from those practices are not enlightenment. That's why the Buddha in the Siddhartha in the story, he says, okay, you're absolutely obtained bliss, clairvoyances. People believe they're enlightened. Many of the great beings that are called enlightened beings, say in the Hindu tradition or whatever, they attain those states which are so rare, and their minds are more subtle and powerful than anybody else, but they're not enlightened. They haven't realized, they haven't cut the root of samsara with shunyata. They haven't cut marigpa. But yes, you're right. They're temporary states, but you keep going on. You're still impermanent, but you just keep going on. That's why they're discouraged in a way, because with bodhicitta, they say before you attain any of those kinds of states, you should have the bodhisattva vow clear in your consciousness that when I die, I'm going to come back to this realm and I'm going to help all beings, my mother, my father, all the beings you practice doing. Because when you reach some of those, when you reach the state of arhatship, you cut the volitional factor of the mind. There's no mind that says, I'm going to do this or do that. So if you realize emptiness and you're free, you got to have the bodhisattva vows there, because they are what keep you, they're the volition, the intention that's put in your mind, what keeps you going in replacement of that karma, that I will keep going and interacting with all the beings that I've made in my vows. I'm going to enlighten this person, this person, this person, this person. So definitely it's not enlightenment, but when you get there, you can think it is, because it's such a conceivable high state. Even the God realms, the ones with pleasures and subtler minds, the one we think of gods in heavens, they are extremely high realms. And that's why in the monotheistic religions seem kind of funny to, kind of crazy to the Buddhists believe in all these different God realms, and the Hindus, of course, and the Greeks, etc. In the Teutonic tradition, you have the gods and all the interaction of the gods. They're very pleasurable beings. They have super pleasure, but they're definitely not enlightened, And sometimes they have their little conflicts. But Bob Thurman said something very good once. Bob Thurman's kind of a Dharma hero. He's so funny. And he said, how can there be this God who's can be the only one God? There's many gods, we've all been gods. We've all been this, according to Hinduism, Buddhism, all the ancient traditions. We've been gods before, and then we've fallen down again and again. And Bob Thurman said, the main klesha, the main affliction of pride, the human realm is attachment, the animal realm is anger, etc., the hell realm is anger. But the main one for the God realm is pride. So they're very proud because they're the most beautiful. They live seemingly forever. They don't live forever. Things change and they die. And it's a horrible time in their life. Everybody leaves them. So Bob Thurman says, if you're a God, you think you're the only one. You think you're the only one. I thought that was so funny. Such a great way of putting it. Anything more?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're going to continue. Basically, if we've gone through all the other afflictions, pride, jealousy, they all come from those two, mostly come from attachment or aversion, So you could say, and it goes back to the Heart Sutra, what I taught today. Things appear, and they appear if they exist from their own side, because we haven't realized shunyata. Everything appears it's existent from its own side. Everything. And to everybody. And so, until we cut that, we don't cut the root of samsara. And so things appear as self-existent. And according to the way the Buddha, things appear as they're self-existent, desirable or undesirable, good feeling, bad feeling. I want this, I don't want that. That was the importance of that. And from that, it's another way of looking how samsara carries on. We want the good, we don't want the bad. We interact positive, negative with other beings. And we go through birth after birth, wanting more, wanting this. Attachment kind of at the grosser level makes samsara go around. Samsara, it's the gross level of samsara that is these 6 realms of rebirth. The real definitive samsara is the 5 aggregates under the appropriated aggregates under the power of delusion and karma. That's a strict definition of samsara. The general one is like there's different realms where we're reborn, rebirth, around. It's a good distinction to make. It's good to have clarity on these fundamental points of the Dharma. And I think it's more important than even studying for 7 years some of the finer points, Having our basis is what I say the basis of studying low rig. You'll get a chance to do that. I'm sure you can study low rig, mind and mental factors. Of all the things I studied when I was a monk and we did the whole course, I did Madhyamaka, Avatara, and a few things. We didn't do the whole thing at Nalanda. We did some important ones, and some of them were very great. They touched the mind in a very deep way. But low rig, understanding the mind and what is conception, what is a perception and everything, that really helps. I want to give you an example of doing this basic Satipatthana meditation. Okay, you start off, usually they say you just stick with the breath, don't you? You just stick with that. And you don't go off. If you don't have to go off, you anipanasada, that's the basis. And you stay with that, and you stay with that, and you stay with that. And you can be a real master to stay with that for a long time, etc. But something distracts, doesn't it? Some form of thinking, some concept, etc. We get distracted. And then they teach you, then you gently move your mind toward the distraction. Because karma is intention in the Theravada tradition there, they say, you cut samsara at the level of cutting intention. There's no more intention to go around. So you're really taught to be aware of breath, be aware of body, feeling, minds, objects of mind, and being aware of your intentions. So you're very careful. All of a sudden there's a distraction, and almost the most common distraction is my knee. My knee hurts. It hurts so much that I think I'm going to be a cripple if I keep on meditating. I've thought this. I did a Goenka course when I was a beginner. You promise not to move for 1 hour, and you don't know what I meditate. 1 hour, 5 minutes into the hour, I'm getting crippled. This is not a good thing to be doing. My leg is hurting so bad, I'll never walk again. And so you get the pain at the knee. So when you move, then you think, moving my attention, you don't make a big thought about it. You move with your intention. I'm intending to observe the pain at the knee. I have pain at the knee. And when you feel the pain at the knee, that pain feels like the most self-existent concrete thing unimaginable. It becomes very real, that pain. But when you understand mind and mental factors, it's not possible, because pain is not an object of tactile consciousness. The only objects of tactile consciousness are rough, smooth, sharp, dull, hot, and cold. Only those things appear to a tactile consciousness, not pain. Pain's a concept, it's an idea. So when you move your mind to the pain, there isn't really any pain. It's a concept. It's a concept that's labeled to maybe sharp. Maybe the feeling you're getting that's causing you so much trouble is a sharp feeling in the mind, or a dull feeling, a sharp feeling. And so you put your mind there, and then you just meditate on the emptiness of pain. Pain is just a concept. But right there, you meditated on emptiness. You've seen that pain does not exist on your knee because it's a concept. But what exists at the knee are the tactile sensations. So by studying low rig, you know what a concept is. And by studying low rig, you right away, you knew the object of the 5, 6 senses. For example, the sense consciousness is hot, cold, rough, smooth, sharp, dull. And for example, eye consciousness, the only thing that can appear to eye consciousness is color or form. That's it. Only color and form. That's all that can appear. You know that. You learn that. But we mix it up all the time, don't we? Like, for example, take this cup. I'm holding a cup, and I put it in your hand, and you close your eyes. What do you feel? And most people will see, I feel a curve. I feel a curve. But actually, that's a lie. The curve is an object of eye consciousness. You're feeling the smoothness or roughness, the heat or cold of the cup. So right there, you can see how we're caught in the realm of concepts that have nothing to do with the basis. And so by a simple meditation of seeing there's no pain, you've seen the emptiness of pain. Doesn't mean you realize emptiness and you're free, but it's a step in that practice. It's quite amazing, isn't it? You know? So we're living in a world of conceptuality, the iron net of conceptuality. We're not really touching things. And this is stressed a lot in this tradition, this Pali tradition of like, and it's not completely true even the way they present it. You just meditate directly on what is, and let the thoughts go, let the concepts go, you know. Just what appears, just that, and let it go. And if it's a thought especially, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. Just a thought, thinking. So it's very nice to learn as a basis for all of our practice. What are the different objects of the senses? What is a concept? What is a direct perception, et cetera, et cetera. And that comes in a beginning course at the beginning of low rig. You can probably study it a little bit. I'm sure they teach it in the monastery. The first things that you study are low rig and Dura. Dura does all the definitions, the whole thing, you know, bum, all these basic definitions. And then low rig is mind and mental factors. And that's the beginning thing. And it's so useful. It's a good reason to make it the beginning teaching. So, where are we? So we're going to go to, we've only done suffering and its cause, haven't we? So then we need to go, those are the afflicted side of cyclic existence. And then so we need to go to the non-afflicted side, and that's the cessation of suffering and the path leading to the cessation. The cessation and the path leading to. I want to find you a few things, one from the Pali tradition or something, stuff I had here. And so at some point I can delineate them. But basically, I don't need to go to a sheet for this, but it's got some good quotes. The cessation of suffering is nothing to say, really. The root of samsara, the root of suffering, is misknowing reality. The antidote to that is realizing shunyata, realizing that everything is a dependent arising. So when you realize that, that's the end, cessation of suffering. It's a true cessation. And then there's some other things you learn in basic Buddhism, permanent and impermanent phenomena. So the cause of suffering is a permanent phenomenon, is an impermanent phenomena. Kleshas, all of it. The cause of dukkha. Dukkha is impermanent, so its causes must be impermanent. But the cessation of suffering is a permanent phenomena. True cessations don't change. They're like space. So you can't create the cause of the separate from samsara. What you can create the cause for is of uprooting all of the afflictions, practicing the path. That's where the causes come in. But it's not like there's a cause for nirvana, a cause for the cessation of suffering. It's non-causal. It's just what's left when you remove it all. Whether you call it the clear light mind, even the clear light mind might be impermanent. So then we have the path leading to the cessation. And in the Theravada tradition, in the basic tradition, it's the Eightfold Noble Path. I might have all those written down somewhere here. I got papers all over the place. But it's like, there's the Eightfold Noble Path. Somebody enumerate them for me. They're just really basic. We kind of know them innately. The path of non-negativity, the path of concentration, the path of all the different stages of practice. And okay. Effort, mindfulness, concentration. Anyway, non-harming, non-this. So, but in the Mahayana tradition, especially in our tradition, we use the graduated path to enlightenment, don't we? We use that. We use the graduated path to enlightenment. And I'm going to go through very quickly through the graduated path to enlightenment. So stains are occasional. They're not mixed with the fundamental purity of our mind. Negative qualities don't have a valid foundation. We can balance our mind with anecdotes, awareness. We can totally purify our minds with wisdom. Positive qualities can be limitlessly developed, transcend all bonds and limitations. In meditation, we can identify the conventional nature of our mind, which is covered by our own conceptions. And we can stop past and future conceptual minds, namtak, and learn to rest our mind in the pure, clear light state. And I want to make a quote here from Lama Yeshe, which is his opening of Introduction to Tantra, which I already said that I would love to teach at your center someday. And because mostly what I'm dealing with is Tantra. And he says, no matter how confused, Lama Yeshe, or deluded we may be, the underlying and essential nature of our being is clear and pure. Like clouds in the sky don't damage the light-giving power of the sun. And the ultimate purpose of all spiritual practice, this is Lama Yeshe, whether it's called Buddhist or not, is to uncover and make contact with this essentially pure nature. We have developed our own inner purity, compassion, and love so we can see their reflection in others. But if we have not contacted these qualities of love, etc., everything we see will be ugly and limited. For example, we see every day as usually nothing more than a projection of our own inner reality. This is in a nutshell, beginning of the Tantra, according to Lama Yeshe, because Tantra, the whole thing is you cut ordinary appearance. You rise as the deity. You see why you relate to being a deity. In a nutshell, we project an I onto the five aggregates. I exist independently because I am all of the nature of the five skandhas. And all Tantra is the fundamental nature of any mind, even a mind of anger, any mind at all, is purity, is pure, clear light nature. So in the Tantra, instead of naming Jimi or I to the 5 skandhas, we label Tara. When I become Tara, we label that to our own pure nature, the basic. It's actually more accurate that we are a Buddha, our Tara, than we are this deluded being, because the fundamental nature of under all of these skandhas is purity, identifying with the fundamental purity of our mind, the clear light mind. Okay, how are we looking at 15, 20? Oh yeah, we have to fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Lamrim prayer. You have a copy. So we're using This Is the Path. This is a very abbreviated Lamrim prayer because it's written, it comes from the Lama Chopa practice. So it's already connected with Tantra. So it only gives a couple of verses of the lower scope and a few verses of the middle scope, because it moves right into the Mahayana and it moves into the Tantra like that. So that's why there's such limited prayers, but we'll have to expand them a little bit. So the basis of this prayer, this comes from the Lama Chopa. In the Lama Chopa, you've all done the Lama Chopa practice. So what are you visualizing? At the very beginning of Lama Chopa, you create the object of refuge. That's Lama Losang Tubuang Dorji Chang. Your guru, it's a tantric practice, the Lama Chopa. Your guru, Lama Losang, is Losang Trapa. Your guru is Tsongkhapa. Lama Losang Tubuang, the Buddha. Dorji Chang, the primordial Buddha. And so that's the object of refuge. When we do the Tara practice, as I do with some of my friends here, and we're inviting you to do in the future, the objects is always there throughout the entire practice. So when you do the Lam Rim prayer, you maintain the visualization of your Guru Lama on your crown, and after every stanza of the prayer, you may inspire me thus, Jingi Lo, bless me thus. So after you meditate on every stage of the Lam Rim, you're praying to the Guru and saying, bless me thus to understand this verse. It makes you deeply understand it. This is why I use Martin Wilson's translations, because they make all these weird translations. In the original translation, at the end of every verse, it says, Jingi Lob, inspire me thus. So he writes, inspire me thus. So you do the prayer and then you say, inspire me thus, to realize the meaning of that prayer. But they mix it all in and blah, blah, blah. He does it the way it's written. So at the basis of the path, how to devote oneself to the Guru as the root of the path to enlightenment. Now, this is a tantric practice, remember? The Four Noble Truths isn't a tantric practice, but we're using the Lam Rim prayer because that's the one that we use. So it's basically a tantric practice. The Lam Rim prayer is coming from that. So the Guru is the root of the path. O holy and worshipful Gurus, supreme field of merit, through my offering and devoted requests, to you, protectors, root of all well-being, may you gladly care for me, inspire me thus. Inspire me thus. And the next verse is actually 2 verses. Let me realize this opportune, fortunate rebirth, rare and found but once, is quickly lost. So that's the perfect human rebirth. And undistracted by the meaningless works of this life, sees its meaningful essence, inspire me thus. In other words, you have the precious human rebirth and death. You've all meditated. If you've done Lam Rim, you've had the precious human rebirth again. And you've told how rare it is. It's rare by example. It's rare by cause, to create the cause, to get one. And so you in the story, the precious human rebirth, and they give the same one, and everybody's so tired of this story by the time they've heard it 100 times, is like, by example, if you a tortoise arising from the bottom of the ocean, sticks its head up above the ocean once every 100 years. That's how difficult it is to get a human rebirth. And for the turtle to put its head through a golden ring that's floating around on the ocean, that's how difficult it is to get a precious human rebirth. So it's a very, very precious thing. And we have it, but we want to keep getting it. We're in the only position we have to get it. Almost you have to be born human to get a human rebirth. And so often we can get so bored with these things. Oh, it's the same old teaching, wah, wah, wah. So I was teaching a class at Tushita, and the classes in the 90s, after every class, about 25 people, introduction, we sat on the floor with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and we could ask whatever questions we wanted. Wow, we got an hour with him. Of course, once he won the Nobel Prize, it was don't even ask anymore, don't even ask. After Vajrasattva, the group still go, I think. So one person asked, what can I do about depression? And the Dalai Lama answered, if you realize the preciousness of this human rebirth, and you have one, and if you realize that you have Buddha nature, pure Buddha nature, indestructible, your fundamental nature is pure, all of these problems are just dark clouds on the top of your purity, and you have this precious human rebirth. He says you would never be depressed. What you have right now, you can't be depressed if you realize how precious this is. Boy, it gave me a whole other idea about the precious human rebirth. Like, wow, that was the answer. No more depression. We are so fortunate. We've contained this birth, and we have most of the freedoms and richnesses we have. We have free spare time. Basically, in Tibetan, the precious human rebirth is Daljor. Leisure and endowments. We have leisure time and we have what we need. Usually that spells leisure time and money. They kind of connected, isn't it? So we can go do Dharma courses, and we can do pretty much what we want, and to the degree that we can is the degree that we have less than the perfect human rebirth, or we use it a little bit less. So amazing, this thing that comes at the beginning of the Lam Rim, it just gives it a whole nother dimension. And then death. I was going to teach all the death absorptions here, but it's so skillful the way I have this precious human rebirth. You're blissful. How wonderful what I have. But death is definite. Its time is indefinite. What helps at the death time? So that means I've got this precious human rebirth, but for how long? Death is definite. I'm going to lose it. And I don't know when I'm going to lose it. Its time is indefinite. And the only thing that's going to help me at the time of death is cultivating the path, cultivating the mind, because from life to life, we take our mind, we take our karmic imprints, we take that, So that's the essence there. And then it goes very quickly to the middle scope. Finding the means of happiness in future lives, afraid of the blazing fire of ill destiny suffering, let me take heartfelt refuge in the three jewels and fervently strive to avoid evil and accomplish all collections of virtue. Inspire me thus. So from this we take refuge. Also, it's said to be a guarantee of a human rebirth, etc. Refuge. So we realize our situation, and this is the cause of refuge in the three jewels. And so that's the last of the lower scope here, even though in the Great Lam Rim, this is taught 10 chapters, maybe less, but anyway, it's more than a third of the Lam Rim. And so then we move to the intermediate scope, developing the desire for liberation. Lower scope is only creating the cause for a rebirth, a perfect human rebirth. The middle scope is the basis of liberation, arhatship. So it means realizing shunyata. And so for that, the middle scope, developing the desire for liberation, frantically tossed by waves of defilements and karma, tormented by the many sea monsters of the three sufferings, from this dread, boundless, great ocean of becoming, let a strong wish for freedom grow in me, inspire me thus. So we have to have the wish not good enough to get a human rebirth again. We want to be free, completely free. We develop the desire for liberation, complete liberation. And then the next verse is still, this samsara like an unbearable prison I see as a charming garden. Rejecting this view, let me keep the three trainings of the Arya's treasures and grasp liberation's banner, inspire me thus. You know, the three trainings are the three baskets, isn't it? Morality, concentration, wisdom. So the three paintings, and then train. And so all that's it. That's all they give. What are the practices of the middle scope? There's the practices of the middle scope are the Four Noble Truths themselves, because the basis of the Four Noble Truths is shunya, is realizing emptiness and becoming free. And the other is the 12 links of dependent origination, are usually taught here. How a karma unfolds. Those two are dealing with shunyata. And by really realizing the 12 links and by realizing the Four Noble Truths, we'll become an arhat. We'll become free from samsara. But we've done our motivation very carefully, taking this practice of the Four Noble Truths, and we combine it with the bodhisattva altruistic wish every time we practice with our dedication, etc. So we're making it a Mahayana practice. And so, but the ones that are mentioned that are strictly coming from the middle scope are the 12 links and the Four Noble Truths. And then we're moving to the higher scope. Contemplating the training in the path of the superior person, generating bodhicitta, all the ways of generating bodhicitta. And of course, this is very abbreviated. Thinking how all these tormented beings that we meditated on, my mothers who cared for me again and again, let me develop unfeigned compassion like a fond mother for her dear child. Inspire me thus. We realize suffering. We realize that not just I have suffering, all beings have suffering. Four Noble Truths. And under the tree, the Buddha realized that he had, and also all beings, and then the Four Noble Truths. A training in the mind of the two bodhicittas, generating conventional bodhicitta, developing even-mindedness between myself and others. As no one desires the slightest suffering, nor ever has enough of happiness, there's no difference between myself and others. So let me be glad when they're happy. Inspire me thus. And this is the method of exchanging self with others, isn't it? And then the next verse, contemplating the faults of the self-cherishing mind. This chronic disease of cherishing oneself is the cause of unwanted suffering. Seeing this, let me lay blame on it and begrudge it and destroy the great demon of self-grasping. Inspire me thus. And so the next verse, my pages are opening here. Contemplating cherishing others. So this is we know this from in cherishing one's mothers, we seek to place them in bliss is the gateway to endless virtues. Let me see this. Although these beings may rise up as my foes, hold them dearer than my life. Inspire me thus. So we see the disadvantages of the self-cherishing. All of our problems come from self-cherishing. And we see the advantages of cherishing. And so, in short, the childish work only for their own gain, the Buddhas only for others, with understanding of how the faults and virtues here differ. May I be able to change self for others, inspire me thus. To cherish oneself is the door to every downfall. To cherish one's mothers is the basis of everything good. So let me make the heart of my practice, the yoga of exchanging self from others, inspire me thus. And so that brings us up to the pinnacle practice of the Mahayana, which is Tonglen. So the series is disadvantages of self-cherishing, advantages of cherishing others, exchanging self with others, and then the Tonglen. So we're going to go back to this background of that again. You see, what keeps us in samsara is eye grasping, rangzin, grasping in an eye that never existed. That's what keeps us in samsara, isn't it? Yeah, you don't need to show the text for a minute. And so the middle scope, we realize shunyata, we overcome our grasping at a self, we realize it's a false self, and we can become free from samsara. But when we get to the Mahayana, that self that we're cherishing, we cherish others. So the difference between us and becoming completely enlightening is self-cherishing mind, me, selfishness. What keeps us in samsara is the self-grasping, the middle scope, and what keeps us from full enlightenment is overcoming the self-cherishing mind. So we have to practice bodhicitta. I'm just going to kind of do this from experience, so to speak, rather than go to the details. So Tonglen's kind of a speciality of mine. Like, it's always courses centered around it because it's something that I got a taste of and when things fell apart. So anyway, before we can develop bodhicitta practice, Tonglen, and the other bodhicitta practice, which is the 6 cause, 1 result, all beings as mother, etc., remembering their kindness. We don't have time to go through all of them unless it's very quick. But anyway, the first one they give here is the Tonglen practice. In fact, maybe it's better to go, but we'll do the other one first and then do Tonglen because we'll have time. So before you can do any bodhicitta practice, you have to equalize self with others. You have to equalize self with others. There's 3 ways of doing this. The first one is realizing that everyone wants happiness. Nobody wants suffering. You really believe that deeply. I want happiness. Everyone else wants happiness. There's no difference between us and others. We all want it. And even Russians want happiness. Americans want happiness. We all want happiness. We don't want suffering. It's a simple way, as I told you yesterday, at the beginning of these highest teachings of the Dalai Lama, he says, everybody wants happiness. No one wants suffering. He's setting equalizing self for others, because you can't meditate on bodhicitta if you're only wishing to enlighten your friends, your family. It's all sentient beings have to be equalized. We're equal. We're not equal. We're not saying we're all one. It's one soup. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that we have to equally work for every being. We don't have to be friends with everybody. We don't have to marry everybody. We don't have to stay with everybody. We have to work for them, the most seemingly evil people or the most difficult people. We never give up bodhicitta. It's a real big downfall to give up bodhicitta. Even for some horrible person, you don't give it up. Never. Once you take a bodhisattva vow, as I awaken for all beings, all beings. So this equalizing self with others is the way we do that. So the most basic one is seeing all beings want happiness. So the middle scope one is the one of friend, enemy, stranger, isn't it? I'm sure you've done this meditation. The middle one depends on rebirth. Some of the practice can depend on rebirth to fully function. Not every aspect of the Dharma, but basically it does in a way. So the first one doesn't depend on rebirth. And the second one is friend, enemy, stranger. So you look at someone and think, this person is my friend. Oh, well, let's start with the enemy. This person is my enemy. I don't like this person, But this person hasn't always been my enemy. Under countless births, I've taken every possibility again and again. So this person in some lives is my enemy. I'm their enemy, sometimes friend, sometimes stranger. Around and round and round we go. So why am I regarding this person higher than other people? Because I'm considering my friend. Friend is an ephemeral thing. It changes from life to life, right? That's how that practice works. And then you focus on a on an enemy and then a friend. They haven't always been my friend. Sometimes, many lifetimes, they've been my enemy. Many times they've been neutral. And so you go through that. And this requires some feeling for rebirth, that in fact, we've had every relationship with every other being, doesn't it? You know, it kind of depends on that. And if our sense of rebirth is weak, it makes that method a little more weak, because we don't have this sense that we've had every relationship with every being, okay? And so then the deepest one, the third way, is, I have to think of the name of it now, you know, is seeing, it's the emptiness of, it's seeing the emptiness of friend, enemy, stranger, the emptiness of this whole thing, you know. It's because it depends on emptiness, it's more powerful. Because you can prove emptiness. Emptiness can be proven. Boom. You don't realize it by then, but you can prove it in a minute. Everything that exists is a dependent arising. Therefore, it's empty of being independent. You can prove that. It's a simple syllogism. Everything is empty because it's a dependent arising. Everything dependent arising. But rebirth is tougher. It depends on seeing all these past lives and everything. So realizing that. So you say, where is this friend? Where is this enemy? Where is it? In the same way we look for the I, you know, where is this I? Where is this Jimi? It doesn't exist. It's just something been labeled to the aggregates, isn't it? It's something that, and we've reified. There is no, we have a body and a mind. Buddhism says there's no Atman, there's no soul, permanent, partless, independent soul that goes from life to life. So we only have a body and a mind, and it's very useful that we call this body mind I or Jimi or whatever, because it helps us to function. We have to be able to realize that I have to go to the bathroom. It helps to know that I have to go to my body, mind have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. But we reify this I, this name, into becoming so concrete, that we think it's the most self-existent thing, but it never ever existed, didn't it? Never ever existed. This is the whole thing with the middle scope, realizing emptiness. Where is this I? And all the problems come from this I grasping and then cherishing this I, realizing this I that never existed. You get a teaching from Lama Zopa, someone who's realized this, he goes on about it. It's just, you just laugh when you see how all the dramas we go through in our life trying to feed this being that never ever existed. The I that we hold is true existent. It never existed. There's a body and a mind. There's things arising and falling. There's good times and bad times, but this I is just a useful tool. And the more we realize that, the less we take ourselves seriously to believe in ourselves at all. So that's important. And so in order to practice bodhicitta, we have to realize that we put a label on someone being the friend, enemy, stranger. I like to use for example for this one. We know the story of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet. It's Shakespeare really had some wisdom. You know? This whole issue is in Romeo and Juliet. Never has there been such a tale of woe as Juliet and her Romeo. What did you have with Romeo and Juliet? You had Capulet and Montague, two families. They were enemies. Capulets are the enemy. Montagues are the enemy. Where is this enemy? And so Romeo, he's torn apart because he can't have his Juliet because he's a Capulet and he's a Montague. She's a Capulet. I mix the two sometimes, but it doesn't matter. She's a Capulet and he's a Montague, whatever. So he can't have her because of this name, this label. And he's talking to his best friend, Mercutio, and he's saying, this name, this curse, show me where is this curse? Is it in my nervous system, is in my heart, is in my stomach? I will cut it out right now. Show me where is this curse of this Capulet, you know? This is pure Dharma, isn't it, that Shakespeare was giving? All of this enemy can't have us because they have a different label. They're labeled as enemy. That's all that's there. And so it's really powerful. Show me where is this I will cut it out now and be finished. Then I can have my Juliet. Show me where is this Capulet. So those are 3 ways of equalizing self with others. And you can't even start the 2 methods of bodhicitta until you equalize self with others. We go to 3:30. No, we go to 4. Huh? Is that it? No, 3:30. I've
4
got a
o'clock.
time. Huh?
4 o'clock.
4. Okay, so we have quite a bit of time then. And we'll go back to a lot of other things as well. We'll go through the whole path and then we'll go back through things. So in order to generate bodhicitta, we have to equalize self with others. Does that make sense? How can we work for all beings if we don't, if some of them we only work for some are enemy? So the less powerful method, it's called 6 causes and 1 result. And so that method depends on rebirth. So it's weaker than the changing self with others. So the 6 cause, 1 result, the first cause is seeing all beings as having been my mother. Given countless lifetimes, probability is there. We've lived countless lifetimes and you have to believe in countless lifetimes. Everybody's been my mother. I've been everybody's mother again and again and again. So we see all beings as having been our mother. Because mother is a very important figure, at least in the Tibetan tradition. It's gotten corrupted a bit in the West, as you'll see. So you do that, and then you relate everybody, and you see someone Lama Zopa, mother sentient being, they'll pick up an insect and go, Ma Semchen, mother sentient being, Ma Semchen, you hear His Holiness Lama Zopa say, Ma Semchen, mother sentient being. Every little insect, they go, Ma, don't harm it, And then the second one is remembering the kindness of every sentient being that's been our mother. So we contemplate on all the kindness of our mother, how she sacrificed completely for us, when she didn't really get to sleep because she didn't want to roll over on us. She wiped our bottom, and she had not to mention putting up with all of our tantrums and everything else for all the years, Unbelievable kindness of the mom, the pain of giving birth, and from the very beginning taking care. And so this is such an important contemplation. And then the next one is wanting to repay that kindness. It comes spontaneously. My mother was so kind, I got to pay her back. I've got to pay back mother beings. It means all sentient beings, I've got to pay back my mothers. The only way I can do it is by giving, practicing, etc. Repaying the kindness of all those mothers. But it's so funny because my first course with Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other courses, people come to the courses and go, but I hate my mother. If I thought of everybody as my mother, I'd hate everybody. And the lamas go, what are you talking about? Nobody can hate their mother. It's not possible to hate your mother. It's out of concept for them. And Dalai Lama, no way, And then it's explained to them about all of our psychologies of the West, and mother this, that, and mother did this, mother did that, and da-da-da. The most outrageous thing that Lama Yeshe said, the whole Western experience, was people suing their parents because they weren't good parents. He said, that's it, that's how crazy it is. So it's inconceivable. And of course, there's stories of mothers that have done harm, et cetera, but they can go beyond that. They can go that countless times in countless lives, they didn't do that. And so at first they couldn't even answer the question, well, what should I do? I'll see everybody as my mother. I'll hate everybody. Well, then think of your greatest auntie or something like that. Come on, see something good and see it and project that on everyone. But mother is the most powerful image, pretty much in the universe for this stuff. And so, and then after that branch, the next of the 6 causes is there's remembering their kindness, wanting to repay their kindness, and then comes love, and then comes compassion. Loving all beings, loving all of our mothers, wanting all of them to have happiness and not have suffering. All beings, every being that we've had in every life has been our mother. We want them to have happiness. So love arises spontaneously from that. That's the definition of love, isn't it? Wanting them to have happiness and not suffering. So I might get reading out of the time here. I might be running out of time. It's 5:54. So it's we go to 4 o'clock. Is that just in a few minutes?
Yes, just a few.
Okay, so we're going to go through Tonglen right now. Boom. So that's the way of generating kindness. And the next is compassion. And the next is, what can I do? What can I do for all my mothers? What can I possibly do for them? And so spontaneously, I can't help them now. I've not helped. So we think if I was awakened Buddha, I could be helpful in benefiting everybody in that sense and in that way. So that's the 6 cause 1 result. And I didn't realize I wasn't following the time that well. I thought, oh, yeah, I still have all the time. So anyway, the other method is Tonglen. We'll go through Tonglen. So that comes from exchanging self with others. And the Tonglen practice is just about the most powerful practice we can have in generating bodhicitta. And the reason I do, because I have no realizations, but I got some realization of Tonglen. And when everything hit bottom in my life, one time at the beginning of 2001, the person I'd been married with, and I was going to be married for life, they left. And that was a blow for me. It was my first living relationship, except I didn't have a lot of relationships. So it was devastating. And I absolutely. And then she came back. At that point, I was a wreck. And at that point, I said, what's the matter with you, Jimmy? You're a Dharma practitioner. You should be able, you should be able to do something. You try to meditate. You have all these meditations. You meditate on karma. It's your karma. All those things helped a little bit. But the main problem was you can't quiet your mind to meditate when it's so disturbed. You sit down to meditate, and even if you clear your mind of the story, it's all screwed up with the prana, isn't it? All this loom and all this tightness. So I was having an anxiety attack in the Katwali Bazaar in Dharamsala, and it hit me Tonglen. Tonglen was taught by Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the early courses that I did it. And it was like he would say, you visualize the self-cherishing mind, this like a lump of coal at the heart. And you think, I'm going to take on all the suffering of all the beings of the hell realms, all in the form of black and everything. And then the next thought, you take on all the suffering of all the beings in the ghost realms, all the beings of the animal realms, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in all these realms, but it didn't work. I mean, it worked, but it didn't work because I didn't have a real understanding of that suffering. So what happened to me when I was having this crisis, I thought, think of all the brothers and sisters out there that are going through the suffering I've gone through. My baby left me, I'm alone. Every song, every poem, every opera is about that. Every blues song, as I said yesterday, I knew that suffering because I was having that suffering. I didn't have to visualize a black lump at the heart. It's a broken heart. I was there spontaneously. So I imagined very clearly all these brothers and sisters in the universe. I could feel what they were feeling. So I had a very clear sense of what I was breathing in. Perfect. I understood. Perfectly understood. So I breathed it in and I gave it to this lump and it worked. Boom. The lump is the self-cherishing. It dissolves it. It really, really worked. I did again. It worked. I did again. It worked. And this blew my mind because this method can really work, but it didn't work before because I didn't really understand. We'd meditate on the hells and do all this, but I understood what that suffering was and understood And so really, really, it worked to relieve the whole situation, not forever, but it actually functioned. So for me, I swore I'll always teach that thing, and I'll always teach certain things in the Tantra. I'll always teach those things whenever I teach the Dharma, and because it worked for me. And I'd rather teach something that I can come from my own feeling experience or whatever than just blah, blah. And that doesn't mean I have some great realization. I just got it. And then other things that come up that give the relief, because when we're going through that kind of suffering, we think we're the only one. Imagine we thinking we're the only one with a broken heart, only one who's suffered this. It's just me, my suffering. And not only you take on everybody else's, and then you don't feel alone anymore. You realize we are part of this whole big family of the broken-hearted people, of the suffering beings of samsara. Everybody's your brother, sister in suffering. All of a sudden, it's a huge leap in every aspect of the most profound method is Tonglen. So we're going to have to wind it up with there. The Lamrim prayer goes from the Tonglen and it goes into the Vajrayana, etc., which is kind of beyond the scope. But anyway, the cause of suffering is grasping at an I. That's what keeps us in samsara. And what keeps us from being fully enlightened is cherishing that I more than we cherish others. So you've got the whole path to practice there. You don't need to produce the sensation. You cannot produce the sensation of suffering. It's not a product. It's not caused. It just is, you know. But what you can produce is your realizations along the path in order to remove the obstacles from this clear nature that we have innately of awakening. So we practice for that. We can produce the results. We can produce the removal of the clouds that are covering the pure light nature of our mind. We didn't get to it. I was going to do it with the death meditation, but I can invite you to join us. And when we do this Tara meditation, twice a week, we'll start it up again. And we go through the path and we put exactly Lama Yeshe's, the essence of the generation stage of highest yoga tantra is dissolving ourselves down to the clear light mind and resting in that clear light mind. You can really get a taste for it when you do it. And we do it every time. Every time you do a highest yoga tantra practice, you do it 3 times, beginning, middle, and end. And I put that in because Lama allowed it in the little Tara practice we do. So you're welcome to join. We do it twice a week. I'm going to keep doing it until COVID ends because the Dalai Lama requested that basically. And you're welcome to join that practice. And so if we were to go further now, all those things would come from that sadhana and what's the end of the prayer of the higher scope. So at the end of the, I'm going to put it anyway. So we can do the dedications. Basically at the end, you always have this being on your crown, and at each verse you say, bless me thus, bless me thus. And so at the end of the practice, you dissolve Guru, or we're doing Tara, we dissolve the Guru, and then we do the dissolutions down to the clear light mind, and then we do the dedication prayers. That's what happens there. So we'll do the dedication prayers. Since we're not doing Tara, we're doing Buddha, we'll do Lama, we do it with them. Lama Tuwang Dorji Chang. O Gawadi Nyu Dong Lama Sangye Dru Gyurne Doa Chi Kyang Malupa Dei Sala Gopar Sho Jang Chub Sem Chogunepo Che Ma Ke Panam Ke Yurchi Ke Panyam Pa Me Paryam Gone Gondu Pelwa Sho. May the bodhicitta that is not, by the virtue of this practice, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha, and lead each and every sentient being to that state. May the bodhicitta, which has not arisen in our mind, may it arise, and that which has arisen never diminish, but growing more and more and more by us doing this practice. So when I put my glasses, so we're going to do the Shantideva prayer, which is, it's perfect for, we're doing this practice twice a week for COVID. So may all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind attain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no loving creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all meditations be effective, and may wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid. May those bound be freed. May the powerless find power. And may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenre, Zik, Tenzin, Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. O Gangri, Rawe, Korwe, Jinkam, Dir, Bendang, Dewa, Malu, Jungwe, Ne, Chenre, Zigwang, Tenzin, Gyatso, Yi, Shape, Site, Bardu, Tenju, Chi. Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, Lozong, for Rabina requesting Lozong to let me be part of the Norbulding family and teach. And I really appreciate this opportunity, and we can do it more in the future. For now, please, is it Anya, Arya? The host?
Oh, Shayla.
Zayla, with Zayla, be sure and write to me. You have the email, and I'll send you all the links because you expressed interest, and also Sonam, so that you can participate in the Tara practice whenever you want.
Actually, if we can get that now, and because I won't be able to disperse it, so if I can get that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go, but I will send it. Do I have your email? Can you just send me an email?
Yes.
jigmay9@gmail.com. I'll do a return on that.
Okay.
And then also the same with Sonam. Yeah, because I have to go and do something that was planned, and I go over, but I go over. It's nice. I want more Dharma. I want to talk about these things, and it's great working with you people, expanding the Dharma family. I really appreciate meeting all of
Could
you. Huh?
Alexandra, could you tell us when they meet?
Yeah,
Thank you, Jimmy. Oh,
well, first I'll say it quickly. The next one is Monday, because we do every Sunday and Wednesday, and we do Sundays Mountain Time at 9:30 and Wednesdays Mountain Time at 8:30, because that accommodates the people in Europe. But this time I'm gone Wednesday, I'm gone Sunday, obviously. So we're going to do a makeup on Monday. So if anybody wants to do it at Monday at it would be the standard time, earlier time, Monday at 8:30, wouldn't it be, Sasha? Monday at 8:30. And that's just a filler because we missed them. And then we'll go back. We'll start going Wednesday. I'll be gone. I'll be traveling the whole day. I'll be moving up to Washington. And then we'll continue with Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday. It'll be regularly. And you're welcome to join. It would really be nice. And we go through the whole sadhana, and then you start meditating on the clear light mind, etc. We don't have enough time to teach all these things, but what I can tell you I can do for you is I can get online on your website and teach how to do the whole sadhana at some point.
Actually, Alexandra has just dispersed that information for us. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay, we'll be in contact, and we will do it in the future. If you can't make it Monday, we can pick it up later.
We appreciate you spending so much time with us, and we're grateful for.
Great, thank you very much, and we'll meet very soon. And we have all kinds of potential. Okay, next time we'll meet is when we do a Tara practice. If it's not Monday, it's following Sunday, etc.
Perfect.
Great, bye-bye. Stay in touch, please.